my husband, Ken, and I built our family home together when we got married. It was the biggest thing I've ever bought. We decided to enjoy our new home together. But I've already thrown away all your things. I never expected our home to be taken away like this. Ken and I got married 3 years ago and built our house right after. We've been paying off the mortgage ever since. I remember the smell of the new house and the sight of my sweet husband. The big living room, with sunlight coming through the windows, was everything we dreamed of. Since we built the house, Ken listened to my ideas, especially about the kitchen and window placements. On Sundays, around 2 p.m., the sunlight comes in perfectly, and Ken and I relax, maybe even nap. I love brewing coffee with delicious beans, filling the house with a warm, comforting smell. These simple moments are my happy place. But honestly, it took a lot of effort to make this happen. I'm really glad I've been working hard. When we got approved for the mortgage, I felt proud of my hard work, and Ken did too. However, about a month after we moved into our new house, my mother-in-law, Pam, who lived alone, called me. You and Ken built a house, right? Now that it's done, I'd like to move in with you. If I stay in my old house, I'll get sick. Pam is single and lives on welfare. We weren't very close, so I wasn't happy about her wanting to live with us so soon after our marriage. Ken said, I know Anna, and I can see how having my mother live with us could be hard. I'll tell her no. Okay, thank you, I replied. Ken understood how I felt, so he told Pam she couldn't move in with us. Then, 2 years later, when we had our first baby, Pam thought it was a good time to ask again. Isn't it hard to take care of the baby and do house chores by yourself? If I move in, I can help with both. Please let me live with you. It was true that caring for the baby and doing housework was tough, and I could use the help. I was also planning to go back to work, so it would be nice to have more help. Well, what do you think? Ken asked. I think it might be helpful to have someone around, I said. Well, if Pam promises to help, then. Pam was really happy when I agreed, and she moved in, saying she'd help with the baby and chores. For the first week, Pam kept her word. She did the laundry, helped with the baby, and took care of the house. I was surprised and even felt bad for doubting her. I was grateful for her help. But after that first week, things changed. Pam started slacking off. When Ken wasn't home, she would relax and not look after our son, even though I asked her to. This happened a lot, and I started to lose trust in her. She wasn't doing her chores or taking care of the baby properly. I didn't want to keep asking her to do things if she wasn't going to help. Ken tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't listen. I'm doing my best too. Anna's just being too strict, Pam would say. But Ken would remind her, you need to help us out. That's why you're living here. Pam would cry or blame me when Ken talked to her, trying to make him feel guilty. She stayed with us, even though she wasn't helping. Over time, Pam became annoyed with the baby, and things got worse. Oh no, he's crying again. He's so loud. Come on, hurry up and make him stop crying. Not only does Pam not take care of our son, but I also feel worried whenever she's around him. Honey, I'm really scared to let our son be around Pam like this. I want her to leave our home as soon as possible. Okay, I understand. I'll find her a new place so she can move out. Ken decided to rent an apartment for Pam, hoping it would make her leave our house. Soon, our living room was filled with her things. I have to hold our son all the time now, because it's dangerous with Pam's stuff around. We've already told her to stop, but she hasn't changed. We'll make her leave for sure. Then, something happened. Oh no, where is he? Where is our son? I panicked when I couldn't find him in his room, and then I saw Pam outside with him. What are you doing? Why did you take our son out without asking us first? I just wanted to show off my grandchild a bit. Do you have any idea how worried I was? If something happened, people could blame us. You shouldn't just take him like that without asking. I couldn't believe Pam had taken our son without saying anything to me. She didn't even seem sorry about it and instead got mad when I yelled at her. Ken was furious too, so we decided right then that Pam had to leave our home. A year passed, and our son turned 1 and started walking a little. Then, something tragic happened. Ken was in an accident on his way home from work and passed away. I couldn't believe it. Why did he have to go? What am I going to do with our son, who's so small? I was heartbroken and couldn't stop crying at Ken's funeral. Then, Pam came up to me. Hi, Anna, I didn't think we'd meet like this again. Oh, Pam. Pam had lost her son, and I knew that must hurt deeply. I tried to hold back my tears and be strong for both of us. It's all so sudden. I know, but since the house belongs to my son, I should get it, right? And the furniture too? Excuse me? Wait, what is she talking about? I was shocked. I thought we were both mourning Ken, but instead, Pam started talking about the house, the furniture, and other things that seemed completely out of place at that moment. I couldn't believe what Pam was saying. Even if she thought she should get the house, it cost around $500,000 to build, and there's still a mortgage to pay. Even if that's true, what about the mortgage? Oh, you're going to pay that, right? Excuse me? Why is she saying this now? I couldn't believe Pam was bringing up the house at Ken's funeral. I don't think we should talk about this right now. We're at Ken's funeral. But this is important. Not now. Anyway, I'll get the house, right? How could she be so pushy? Pam seemed to want me to confirm that I'd give her the house, but with everything going on, I was getting frustrated with her. That's it. Enough, Pam, we're at Ken's funeral. If you keep acting like this, please leave. When I said that firmly, Pam went quiet and walked away. What was she thinking, especially after losing her son? After everything with the funeral and cremation was over, I tried to calm down. I can't stay sad forever. I have to work hard for my son. So, I left my son at daycare and went back to work. My days were busy with work, house chores, and taking care of my son. Then one day, when I came home after picking up my son, I saw all my things piled up in the garbage near the entrance. What's going on here? My clothes, desk, and work things were all in the trash, but my expensive things like clothes, accessories, TV, and fridge weren't. Oh, great timing. You live here, right? Well, the cost of the move is. Huh? The mover explained that Pam had hired him. What is she trying to do? Was Pam in my house? I tried to go inside, but the front door wouldn't open. Did Pam change the locks? Maybe Pam had gotten my house key during all the chaos after Ken's death. I called Pam immediately. What's going on, Pam? Why did you come into my house without permission and throw out my things? What's wrong with me taking my own son's stuff? You're not family anymore, so get out. I'm sorry, what? Ken's not here anymore, so you're not family. Get out before I report you for trespassing. Then she just hung up on me. How selfish and messed up could she be? I had to get my house back. But my son started crying, and I couldn't stay outside forever. I decided to go to a hotel or my parents' house for now. I asked the movers to store my things temporarily, and I left. A week later, I got a call from Pam, sounding upset. The police came over, and it looks like they want me to leave the house, do something about it. How could she say this after kicking me out? Pam was being so selfish. Even if you say so, I'm not your family anymore, since I've gone through a post-mortem divorce settlement. What? Post-mortem divorce? Yeah, it's a process to end my relationship with my deceased husband's family. What? Since I'm still Ken's spouse, I'll inherit the house, but I've cut ties with you, and I don't have to let you live in my house or support you. Huh? You know I have nothing, and you're kicking me out? Yes, I did what you wanted. I'm not your family anymore. But I took care of your grandchild. You're so ungrateful, cold, and strict. Pam didn't seem to understand what she was doing wrong and just got angry instead. Pam's actions didn't surprise me at all. She didn't help take care of my son, so I didn't owe her anything. If you say that, then I have no choice. You can live there if you want. Oh, really? You said I could, right? I can really stay here? Yes, but you need to pay the mortgage in one lump sum. Excuse me? You don't need to worry about the part of the mortgage that's already been paid, just pay the remaining amount, but be warned, it's a lot. What? How am I supposed to pay off the mortgage on a house that was built only 3 years ago all at once? If you can't, then the house is mine, and you, being no longer my family, should be reported for trespassing. I said that and hung up on her. By the way, since my husband had insurance, I didn't have to worry about paying the mortgage after he passed, but I didn't think I needed to tell Pam that. A few days later, I finally got back into the house. It was a mess, furniture was damaged, and my clothes were all messed up. I took photos of everything and documented the costs, including what I'd lost when Pam kicked me out. Even if I file a claim, there's a chance it will be ignored because Pam definitely couldn't pay the money back. but if she does anything else to me, I have proof I can use to shut her down. Then, Pam contacted me asking for a fine of $1,000 for trespassing, but of course, I ignored it. Didn't she understand I was the victim here? There was no way I'd pay that for her. 3 years later, Pam couldn't pay her fines and was found guilty. She was imprisoned for 3 years. Once she got out, Pam contacted me again. Please, I'm really in trouble, I have nowhere to go. It sounded like she was using a payphone, probably begging strangers for money to make calls. Her apartment, my husband had rented it for her when she had to leave, had been shut down. The house Ken and I built together had already been sold. I was worried about Pam coming back, but honestly, she got what she deserved. I wasn't responsible for her anymore. So, I told her to stop bothering me and to live her life on her own. After I hung up, she never contacted me again. That was the end of Pam. She never wanted to live on her own, but I'm determined to raise my son to be strong and independent, unlike her. As I thought about it, I placed my hand on a photo of Ken and my son. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
Peter drove up to the supermarket, his gaze falling on a thin old man sitting on a crate at the store's entrance. The man occasionally reached out to passing customers, pocketing the change he received. Strange, he looks like Mr. Maguire. But Mr. Maguire was a sturdy, healthy man, and this one is quite old and thin, Peter thought as he entered the store. He walked down the aisle, habitually filling his cart with groceries as he used to when Lisa and the children lived with him. He even added a couple of marshmallow packs for Kate and Tom, just in case. Peter himself disliked marshmallows, but as his hand reached for the shelf, his heart ached painfully. A few years ago, Lisa had taken away the children to Spain. He had signed a permission slip, agreeing, despite everything inside him screaming in objection. Turning to the meat shelves, Peter selected a few steaks and a decent piece of sirloin for chops. As he left the store with his packages, he noticed a red-faced man angrily pushing the old beggar. "Stop sitting here, you beggar, making it hard for decent people to get through." "Can't you be polite?" Peter protested. "What? Are you talking to me? I won't be told what to do by a wretch like you." Peter couldn't contain himself. He shifted the bags to one hand and grabbed the fat man's jacket with the other. "I see who the real wretch is. Let me explain it better. Apologize to the elderly man now. I can be more persuasive." Frightened, the fat man mumbled about his hard day, apologized, and scurried into the store. The elderly man turned pale. "Why did you do that? You can get into trouble because of me." Peter waved him off. "What trouble? I just put a jerk in his place. Now he won't bother you again. Here, take this." He took out all the cash from his pocket and pressed them into the old man's hand. The man became agitated, his hand trembling. "What are you doing? It's too much." "It's nothing. It'll last you longer," Peter insisted, then headed to his car. He shoved the heavy bags into the trunk, sat behind the wheel and turned on the windshield wipers. It was drizzling, the damp, overcast weather doing nothing for his mood. And then there were such upstarts who thought they were elite. Damn them! Peter had encountered many, and they always threw him unbalanced for a while. He was about to leave the parking lot when he spotted the old beggar in his rearview mirror, walking with difficulty. Peter pulled up beside him and opened the passenger door. "Get in, Grandpa. How far do you need to go? I'll give you a ride. It's raining. You'll be soaked before you get there." "Oh, thanks, but I'll manage. I might spoil your seat with my wet jacket, son." "Get in. I have removable covers. It's no problem." The old man sat down shivering. He gave directions. It wasn't far. On the spot, Peter helped him out of the car, offering his hand. The old man seemed overexcited, clutching his chest with a bony hand. I'll walk you to the door. Lean on me." "Thank you. God sent you to me, and the angels of heaven." The old man wept. Older people often become tearful, especially those who have had a hard life. At his door, the man silently handed Peter the keys with a trembling hand. Peter unlocked the door, helped him remove his shoes and jacket, and guided him to the sofa. He carefully laid the old man down, adjusting a cushion for comfort. A black dog watched attentively from the kitchen, wagging its tail discreetly. It didn't bark, seeming to understand that this stranger had come to help its master. As the old man settled on the couch, the dog rested its face on his hands, tail wagging again. Peter's eyes welled up. "Shall I call an ambulance to take you to the hospital?" "No, don't. It'll pass. I just need to take a pill. I'm cold and overexcited. It sometimes happens." "Where are the pills? In the kitchen?" Peter found the first aid kit and brought a glass of water. The old man chose the right packet, took a pill, and drank water. He closed his eyes, tired but relieved. "There we go. It'll feel better now." Peter sat nearby, unsure what to do. He couldn't leave now. What if the stranger's condition worsened? And where was he rushing to? Who was waiting for him at home? The black dog approached Peter, looked into his eyes, then licked his hand, as if thanking him for helping its master. "You must be hungry, my friend. Hold on. I'll be right back." He patted the dog lightly and went to the kitchen, searching the cabinets for dog food. Finding none, he opened the refrigerator and was stunned. It was nearly empty. 1 egg, 2 potatoes, and an onion in the vegetable drawer, half a loaf of bread in a bag on the shelf, and the remains of porridge in a pot. How does this poor, lonely old man survive? Peter wondered. Peter went down to the car and took the bags from the trunk. An hour later, the old man came into the kitchen. His face was no longer a pale green colour. He had come to his senses, taken a nap, and it had given him strength. On the floor lay his content dog. He had eaten a piece of veal tenderloin in a couple of bites, and his master was there. What else did the dog need to be happy? There were plates on the table waiting to be filled. The cups were already steaming with fragrant tea. In a vase lay a neatly sliced baguette. In another, a handful of white and pink marshmallows. On the face of the owner of this poor kitchen was a look of amazement. How long had it been since he had smelled such aromas? How long since he had seen dishes on his table? Peter took the lid off the pan and placed the smoking steaks on plates. "Sit down, grandfather," smiled Peter. "It's been a long time since you've had a feast like this." The old man fussed. "Oh, I'll wash my hands. I didn't wash them when I came." Then he turned around, not having taken a couple of steps, and whispered to Peter, "Thank you, kind soul. God give you good health." "Woof," joined the dog. He understood everything people said verbatim. Then they realized they hadn't properly met. Over an unexpectedly hearty dinner in this poor house, the conversation flowed leisurely. "I'm Mr. Maguire, and what should I call you, my saviour?" Peter smiled broadly. It wasn't for nothing that the old man had seemed familiar to him at the store. "You won't recognise me, of course. I'm Peter Surratt, from the village. You used to live there." Mr. Maguire took a closer look. "Peter, you little brat! You and Bill used to steal cherries from my garden." "Of course I wouldn't have recognised you, but I remember. I remember everything very well." Peter smiled. He felt so warm, as if he had met a dear old friend. "How long ago did you move from the village to the city?" he asked. "A long time ago, Peter, when my daughter got married. She persuaded me to sell the house there so that she and her husband could buy a bigger apartment in the city. They sold the house, took the money, and bought a new apartment in a good neighbourhood, and this tiny apartment belonged to my son-in-law, so they re-registered it to my name, but now he often comes here and asks me to sell it too." "What do you mean?" Peter didn't understand. "And where are you going?" "Where to? To a nursing home," smiled the old man sadly. "Yes, I would agree. What have I left here? But where to put my dog? They won't let me keep a dog there. They'll make me put him to sleep, and that's impossible. Charlie is smart like a human being, but he doesn't speak. How can I let them kill my best friend? It's despicable." The dog growled softly, shifting his gaze from one man to another, realizing again what they were talking about. Mr. Maguire reached out his hand and soothingly rubbed him on the back of his neck, stroked his head affectionately. "No one will hurt you, Charlie. Don't be afraid, as long as I'm alive. By the way, Peter, don't you recognize him? It's the puppy you once dropped under my door on the porch, thinking he was dead. But I took care of him, and he's been with me ever since. Isn't that right, Charlie?" The dog, smiling, readily thumped his tail on the floor, confirming, "Yes, it's true, master. I named him Charlie. In his puppyhood he was so round. It's now he's skinny, and I'm a couple of sizes smaller too. We've had a hard time lately. I bought medicine, paid the utility bill, but we had little left for food. We had to go to the store with outstretched hands. There was no other way out." Mr. Maguire became sad, and then he cheered up and exclaimed, "But you see, there's good in everything. I met a fellow villager, and you helped us out so much. I'd say that I'd slowly collect money and someday pay you back, but you won't take it. Thank you, Peter." Peter was on his way home from the unexpected guests, and from time to time he wiped his eyes. Memories came flooding back, as if he had plunged back into his mischievous childhood. "Peter, you rascal! Where the hell are you? I sent you for Dill. And where did you disappear to?" shouted Grandma from the porch. "I'll give you a beating. I'll tell your mother and father everything." But Peter, without paying any attention to his granny's quarrelling, was whispering with Bill by the fence in the garden, hastily negotiating another plan for a raid on Mr. Maguire's tempting orchard. The cherry trees there were bending under the weight of ripe berries, and the man didn't pick them anyway, so he doesn't need them. "Okay, let's go as soon as it gets dark, but now I'm running. Your grandmother is already cursing, and my mum has been running with a stick for a long time, looking for me," said Bill, Peter's best friend. As darkness fell, Peter stretched himself blissfully in bed and realized that he didn't want to go anywhere. He wished Bill hadn't come. There were mosquitoes and stinging nettles, and here it was so soft and cosy, and he wanted to sleep. But a small pebble hit the glass. Peter sighed and put on his shorts. He had hidden his sandals under the bed to climb out the window at night. In Mr. Maguire's garden, of course, the dream was completely wiped out. Not only because of mosquitoes and nettles. The cherries were large, sweet as honey. The boys climbed up the overloaded branch together and ate the berries. Suddenly, it broke off. Angry Mr. Maguire jumped out onto the porch, shouting and swearing. Even in the faint light of the lamp, one could hear how red he was with anger. "Oh, you naughty boys, you've ruined such a branch!" Running away to a safe distance, Bill, scratching himself, muttered, "Nasty old man, mean and greedy. I'll take revenge on him." The next day they saw a dead black puppy lying in the grass by the brook. Bill took the puppy by the hind leg and carried it away. "Where are you taking him?" inquired Peter. "It'll be like a pirate's black mark. I'll throw it under his door, that evil old man. Let him know that he deserves revenge." Peter followed his friend and tried to persuade Bill not to do anything stupid. "Well, it's our own fault. We went into his garden without asking. We broke such a big branch. We most likely ruined the tree. Why should we take revenge on him?" "Are you my friend or not?" Bill squinted. "Yours, of course," Peter hurriedly replied. "What's the matter with you?" "Well, if you're my friend, then support me in everything as friends should. Sit in the bushes by the gate, on the lookout. Whistle to me if anything happens, and I'm off to do my job." Bill crept through the gap and slipped onto the porch, leaving his black mark there. Peter felt very uncomfortable about the old man afterward. He even wanted to sneak into the yard, remove the puppy's corpse, and throw it away before Mr. Maguire found it. But it didn't work out. His grandmother took Peter to help carry sugar from the store for jam. Then his parents came and took Peter to town. The school year started. Later, Grandma died. His parents sold the house, and Peter never returned to the village. Over the years, he almost forgot about the village. His childhood memories melted away like a vague dream. And now, the past found him. Now Peter realized that Mr. Maguire wasn't an old man back then. He just had a grizzled beard, and he was grey-haired, early greying, so he had seemed old to the boys. Peter visited Mr. Maguire frequently. The old man could no longer cope with household difficulties, was often sick and had no one to help him. Peter repaired his warped balcony door, which had a strong draught. Then he replaced the faucet in the kitchen. One day he ran into Mr. Maguire's daughter Cassandra at the house, a heavy-set woman with watery eyes. She was hastily hiding money in her pocket when Peter entered. Peter remembered her vaguely from childhood. Back then she had been a slender, ruddy girl with braids, and now she had undergone such a metamorphosis over the years that she was unrecognizable. "Ah, I see you're not bored here, Daddy. You're making friends." She grinned grudgingly, and Charlie growled in response to her words. It was clear the dog didn't like the visitor. "And you, dirty, ugly dog, get the hell out of here! Yuck!" She stomped her foot. "You've got a menagerie and total unsanitary here." "Well, Charlie is neat and tidy." Mr. Maguire excused himself, rubbing his chest on the left side with a familiar gesture. His heart was seizing again. Visits from his daughter were not easy for him. "Cassandra, by the way, tell me, how did your father ask for money at the store? And how dare you take away his pension?" Peter stepped into the conversation. "What's it to you? Who are you? Stay out of our family," shrieked the woman. I see there's no appealing to you. I'm someone who cares that an old man is starving, because his own daughter is taking the bread out of his mouth. All right, Daddy, I'm going to go. I'll come back another time when your new friend won't be here." Peter hummed. The day he gets his pension money? Don't be deceived, I'll be there. I'll make sure you don't rip him off again, Cassandra. Stop robbing the old man of everything. Jerk. She left the apartment and slammed the door loudly. "Why are you doing this, Peter? My daughter is my daughter, my own blood, the only one in the world. How can I not help her?" Mr. Maguire rummaged through the medicine cabinet, taking out the necessary pills and drinking water. "Mr. Maguire, I can see that it is you who need help. You don't even have enough for food, and she, judging by her well-fed appearance and fur coat, is not so much in need of help." The old man frowned. Charlie, seeing the look on his face, gave a muffled grunt. He had grown to love this delicious-smelling stranger, who had begun to visit their house. But he wasn't allowed to upset his master. On the day when Mr. Maguire got his next pension allowance, Peter kept his word and arrived at the man's house a little earlier to get ahead of Cassandra. She came in without even ringing the doorbell and opened the door with her own key. Finding her father and the recent guest sitting in the kitchen, Cassandra frowned unhappily. "Is that one here again?" "Hello to you too," said Peter cheerfully. Dad, let's go to the living room. I need to talk to you privately, Cassandra hissed through her teeth. Sit down, my daughter. Have tea with us. Peter brought such delicious cakes. Try some. I don't have time to drink tea here. The old man obediently went after Cassandra into the living room, whispering, I'm sorry, daughter. I have nothing to give you. My shoes have completely fallen apart. I bought new ones and paid the utility bill. If I give you the money, I won't have enough left for food, so I'll have to go to the store again, but I don't feel comfortable begging. How come there's nothing to give? I could have picked out your shoes in a second-hand shop, and you should treat fewer guests so that you have enough. I need to repay the loan, I told you, and you said you'd think about selling the apartment. The notary is waiting for us, and there's already a buyer. Where am I going? To the train station? To the bums? I already told you where, to the sanatorium for old people. Sanatorium, a nursing home where they don't allow dogs. Mr. Maguire continued to justify himself. It's about time you put that scrawny mutt of yours to sleep. Here's the deal. Tomorrow we'll bring the notary right here. This is where you'll sign the documents. Peter couldn't stand it and interfered into the conversation. Why don't you put your father to sleep too, so he won't get in the way? Or maybe you won't interfere. No one asks about your opinion. This is my family business, and anyway, you have already got your eye on my father's apartment. Probably that's why you spend so much time near my father, trying to put his watchfulness to sleep and pretending to be someone who cares about him. I've got my own apartment, and I have a conscience, unlike you. OK, I'm sick of this, Dad. I want him out of here, right now, right away. Mr. Maguire stood confusedly silent, looking at his daughter, and then asked, When did you become like this, daughter? How come I didn't see it before? What? What do you mean, like this? If he doesn't leave, then I will. Choose, Daddy. It's either him or me. He won't go. He's staying. And I'm not putting the dog down. Not ever, said Mr. Maguire quietly but firmly. Ah, so. Well, have a happy stay. You'll be sorry. Cassandra slammed the door again, as last time. Why don't our nearest and dearest understand us? Why are strangers sometimes dearer to us than our own? Muttered Mr. Maguire bitterly, addressing no one in particular. Woof! Cautiously echoed Charlie, as if supporting his master. Pills? Asked Peter, fearing that the old man would have another attack. No, Peter. No need for pills. Let's go and finish our tea. It's probably getting cold by now. Soon after, Peter had an unexpected but joyful event. Lisa arrived and brought Tom and Kate. May I? She asked from the threshold. Of course. It's your house too. With a broad gesture, Peter invited them in, and for a long time he hugged his children. Well, you never know. Maybe you're already married here, and your new wife won't be happy about the kids. Lisa, stop it. I won't have a new wife, as you say, who won't be happy about children. Tom and Kate sat hushed on the living room sofa. Peter wondered. What's wrong, children? I don't recognize you. Dad, and will you give up on us too? Asked Kate. What do you mean? Peter didn't understand, but Lisa called him into the kitchen. So he kissed Kate, ruffled Tom's head and said, I'll be back soon, my dears. Don't be bored. Play. In the kitchen, Lisa shocked her ex-husband with news that clarified everything. Their unexpected arrival, and why the children were so confused and hushed. Lisa was pregnant with twins. Even though her new husband had a big house, her children were a nuisance to him. He was always annoyed that they were noisy and naughty. You see, Jose likes quiet, and he wants only his kids to make noise in his house. Other people's children bother him. And you? Are your children suddenly bothering you too? You've changed, Lisa. Peter, don't twist things around. If you don't want them, I can send them to private boarding schools in London. That's what Jose suggested. What are you talking about? What do you mean, don't want to take them? Peter protested. Are they puppies or what? In the end, Lisa left the children and flew to Madrid alone. Peter was delighted. He adored his children, and they certainly never bothered him, even when noisy and mischievous. The children befriended Mr. Maguire and, of course, Charlie. The old dog was happy. So much attention in his old age, and plenty of food and cuddles. Peter also went to the village and found out that Mr. Maguire's house had been empty for several years. The family that bought it as a summer house was disappointed. The once well-kept yard and garden had fallen into disrepair. They had to work, take care of it, cut the grass, trim the bushes, and they didn't want to do that. When the yard became overgrown with weeds, they stopped going there. Anyway, I've decided to buy your former house, Mr. Maguire. I found the owners, talked to them, and they agreed to sell. But what, Peter? What's the problem? The man asked, worried. Well, I didn't save money on purpose. I thought I didn't need much on my own, especially since my children were gone. I have half the sum, but I'll have to collect the other half. It won't be quick. I'll need to get a part-time job because I have more expenses now. Now my kids are with me, and I've been thinking it would be great to bring them to you all summer for vacations. Okay, I see. I'm going to have to sell this apartment. It's time, said Mr. Maguire. I'll make this purchase for the two of us. You'll have your own house again, not a nursing home. The dog will be better off there too, and will come with the kids every weekend. Absolutely not. Mr. Maguire waved his hands. I know you, my dear, and I know how kind and generous your heart. You won't hurt me. He brushed away a tear that rolled out of his eye and sighed. But I'm not eternal, and when my daughter's inheritance is due, she'll take your half of this house out of your throat, so you should buy it under your name, Peter. I totally trust you. Peter finalized the deal quickly. Before moving Mr. Maguire's small belongings, he managed to hire a skilled team that cleaned up the house. They fixed the roof, plastered the walls, changed the windows, and restained the floors. When the whole family arrived with their things, they saw a black kitten in the yard, which was the first to be let into the house. "It's going to be Charlie Junior," exclaimed little Tom. "When we come with Kate in the summer for vacation, I'll teach him to walk on his hind legs." Mr. Maguire stroked the boy's wiggly head. "You are my trainer, of course. You'll come. The cherries will be just in time." Charlie Senior wagged his tail affably, licked the old man's hand, and then licked the new, little, fluffy-smelling unfamiliar. That was good. Now they are home at last. The master is close by. And what more do you need to be happy? The private medical clinic was divided by a clean, stylish hallway into two wings. On the left were the adult patients, and on the right, those under 18. Clem, once inside, immediately turned left toward the stairs. Ignoring the elevator, he didn't want to meet anyone or share the cramped space of the elevator car with patients or doctors. The man clutched a bouquet of flowers that Laurie, his wife, would neither smell nor see. A waste of money, of course, but it was crucial for him to maintain the appearance of caring for his wife, more important now than ever. The stark white light of the hospital was too bright for him. It stung his eyes, reddened from a sleepless night. Clem had spent nearly the entire night at his friend's club, smoking hookah and drinking. In the morning he'd taken some medicine to get rid of a headache and chomped through a pack of gum promising frosty fresh breath to hide traces of his revelry. Yet the reflection he caught in the mirror before leaving still looked haggard. He walked along the now familiar hospital route. His wife's room was on the second floor, at the very end. She had been lying here for over a month. Clem realised that every day Laurie spent in the clinic, with its expensive equipment and best doctors, was costing him dearly. He resented it, but what could he do? Suggest there was no hope, and it was time to let Laurie go, asking the doctors to disconnect her from the machines, or hint that she should be transferred to a simpler facility. No, that would be too suspicious and even dangerous. Clem, by nature cowardly, couldn't afford such a risk. Clem reached the room and was about to open the door when he froze, like prey sensing a predator. "Yes, you shouldn't grieve so much. There was an incident last week, but we managed to pull your daughter through," a man's voice said outside the door. "Now the prognosis is excellent. Believe me, we're doing absolutely everything we can to help Laurie. You know, we've already done so much. The last operation was a great success. It's all up to Laurie now. She has a young body. I'm sure she'll cope and pull through." Clem listened, his ear nearly pressed to the door. He recognised the calm timbre of Laurie's attending physician, a neurosurgeon, who was also the head of the hospital, Dr. Brousseau. Clem disliked the man. He was too kind, incorruptible, and proper. If someone else had been in his place, Laurie wouldn't have clung to life for so long. But this doctor was still trying to save her, though Clem was sure he was just milking him for money. A jerk in a white coat. A woman sobbed outside the door. A man with a husky voice immediately began to comfort her. Clem rolled his eyes to the ceiling, but immediately winced in pain. "Charming," the visitor mentally muttered. "My in-laws are here too, just what I need, today." Clem gripped the flower stems tighter, wondering if he should flee. He could come back later, perhaps wait in the restroom. However, Clem stayed to eavesdrop on the neurosurgeon's words. "Look, there's no need to be upset, especially in front of Laurie. On the contrary, you should talk to her more often now, support her. Let your words be positive," the doctor insisted with his usual gentleness. Clem nearly let out a disgruntled snort. The jerk had persuaded them to talk to Laurie, who lay there lifeless, seemingly turning into a vegetable. "Can our daughter hear us?" Sarah Flynn asked hopefully. "Yes, she hears everything. Well, I believe so," the man reassured the patient's parents. "Understand, a coma is one of the most mysterious human states. We can't count on a miracle like they show in movies or fairy tales like Sleeping Beauty. She can't simply wake up and start running. We have many challenges ahead, but that's for later. Currently, we can try to help Laurie. My team and I will provide supportive care. I expect you to help as well." "What kind of help?" the woman sobbed. "We'll do anything." The doctor paused for a moment, then tried to explain. "You know, a study by doctors was recently published in a journal," the neurosurgeon began. "The article stated that comatose patients recovered faster and better when supported by loved ones. For instance, some patients listened through headphones to their favourite songs, familiar stories or books, or even better, recorded stories from family members about their lives. These were the voices of parents, grandparents, siblings. Using magnetic resonance imaging during these listening sessions, scientists noticed a significant increase in neural activity in certain areas of the patient's brains. After a few weeks of such stimulation, treatment dynamics improved and patients began responding to other external stimuli." Clem frowned. He wondered if the doctor truly believed what he was saying, or was he just tired of watching Laurie's parents wail, making the room damp. Seriously, Sarah was crying so much she might flood the room floor and breed frogs. Although it was easy to understand the parents' suffering. Laurie was the late and deeply loved child of the Flynn couple. She grew up a real princess. Sarah gave birth to the child on her third attempt. Sadly, the first 2 pregnancies ended in loss. She experienced each loss profoundly, thankfully with Bernard always there to support his wife. When she became pregnant for the 3rd time, she had little hope. However, Laurie, as Sarah later said, very much wanted to meet her parents. Doctors called the birth of a healthy girl a real miracle. Naturally, the overjoyed parents surrounded Laurie with not only care and love, but also every available benefit. By that time, her father had already built a construction business. The small company grew stronger and stronger. At first, he focused on building private houses, then entire cottage communities. He handed his brainchild over to his daughter a few years ago, retiring to a well-deserved rest. Laurie became a worthy heiress. As head of the company, Laurie met Clem. He was then a manager in a young construction materials company. They met at a real estate forum for business, networking between developers and contractors. Laurie was a speaker. While some men in the audience were initially skeptical about a woman in the construction business, as soon as Laurie opened her mouth, she won everyone over. Laurie Flynn was a self-confident and incredibly beautiful woman, as if from a magazine cover. She exuded a special energy. Clem didn't immediately dare approach her, being a simple manager from an ordinary family. However, he took a risk, and it turned out Laurie didn't care at all about his position. She never judged people by gender, hierarchy, wealth or appearance. She liked Clem. He was charming, skilled at joking, and courted her gallantly. A romance quickly blossomed between Laurie and Clem. Soon, Clem quit his job to work for Sarah's company. Clem swiftly realized he couldn't find a better partner in life. He proposed to Laurie 6 months after they met. Surprisingly, Laurie agreed. Though she was the company's head, adept at making deals and resolving conflicts, even donning a helmet to visit construction sites, she remained a woman in love. At first, everything went smoothly. Clem enjoyed his new life of comfort and prosperity. Laurie wasn't bothered that she earned more than her husband. She bought her husband a new luxurious car. However, Clem's desires soon began to grow. What he had was no longer enough. Moreover, he became increasingly paranoid. After social gatherings with friends or relatives, he'd return home angry and indignant. A year after the wedding, he finally lost his temper.
"Did you see how they look at me? Like I'm your lapdog, an appendage to my wife. It's infuriating,"
he fumed after a New Year's Eve party.
"You're always talking about your company and your plans."
"They asked about it," Laurie replied, confused, as she removed the astonishing earrings her parents had given her. "Should I have stayed silent?"
"You could have, for once,"
Clem hissed, yanking off his tie.
"Everyone's laughing at me behind my back. Soon they'll say I'm here as a house husband, and will ask me which toilet cleaner is better to use, lemon or Alpine Fresh."
"You're being ridiculous." Laurie frowned, upset. She had thought the party went well. "No one thinks that, except you." The man stood rigid, clenching and unclenching his fists. Then he blurted out what had been on his mind for months.
"You know what, Laurie? I want you to hand over the running of the company to me. Officially."
Clem had recently gotten a promotion at his wife's company, becoming something of a right-hand man, but apparently that wasn't enough for him. "Why?" Laurie gasped.
"Because I work just as hard as you, but nobody cares. Because I'm the man of the house. Yet no one understands that, not even you. You should settle down already. Give me a child at last. Stay home and take care of our family, and I'll run the business. It's the right thing to do."
Laurie turned pale. The couple had been trying to conceive since their wedding, but unsuccessfully. Laurie knew her mother's story and feared a similar fate. Secretly, she was even afraid of conceiving and then losing the baby. Perhaps that's why nothing worked, as the doctors couldn't find any other reason. They said the problem was in Laurie's head, though she was physically healthy. However, the husband's words hurt her even more. "My father built this company," Laurie said. "You have everything. You have power, an office, subordinates, and power of attorney. You can sign all the documents. But the company will remain mine, and then it will go to our children." Clem's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then he spat out caustically.
"Ah, to the children you can't seem to give birth to. I guess you're better at business than at motherhood."
With that, he left the room, slamming the door. Laurie was shocked by this argument that came out of nowhere. However, it was only the first in a series of quarrels. A month ago, she and Clem attended a business party. Laurie's mood was low. She and her husband were arguing more frequently, and now Laurie didn't think about a child. She contemplated divorce, but was afraid to voice it. Divorce seemed like a defeat, something wrong. She kept giving Clem chances, but he squandered them all. At the party, despite her inner turmoil, Laurie outwardly remained composed, beautiful, and dignified. She was like a queen at a reception. The business women engaged in polite conversations with the men and their companions. Clem, eyeing his wife like a wolf, grew increasingly intoxicated. The evening was far from over when he abruptly interrupted the conversation between his wife and her business partner, roughly grabbing her elbow and pulling her away.
"Excuse me, I need my wife's attention too,"
he sneered, noting the surprise on Laurie's interlocutor's face. "What are you doing?" Laurie whispered, frightened but trying to maintain her composure. "You're hurting me." Clem ignored her protests. He dragged his wife out of the restaurant and into the parking lot, shoving her into the passenger seat of his luxury car before slamming the door.
"We're leaving. I'm sick of watching you flirt with everyone. And the way they look at you, those bigwigs," he snarled. "Now I see why your business is booming. You played the role of a real woman, didn't you? How many times did you spread your legs for lucrative contracts, huh?"
Laurie was so shocked. She didn't immediately register that Clem had inserted the key into the ignition. "Clem, no, you're drunk. Please, calm down. Let's call a cab and go home."
"I'll drive myself," he bellowed. "Sit down. You're my wife. My wife. You're married to me. You must obey me. I'm the head of the family. Understand?"
Laurie attempted to escape the car, but was too late. The expensive vehicle lurched forward, tires screeching. Laurie screamed as she was thrown against the dashboard, then slammed back into her seat. Clem continued to yell, while Laurie wept, begging him to stop. With trembling hands, she fastened her seatbelt for some protection, but it was futile. "We're getting a divorce," she screamed internally. "I'm leaving you." At that moment, Clem swerved violently, losing control of the steering wheel. The car careened off the road. There were no witnesses. The crash site was devoid of houses or cameras. The man erased the video from the car's recorder, then removed and concealed it. When the police arrived, Clem bribed them with a substantial sum to believe his fabricated story. He claimed he had seen a wild animal, and Laurie, being kind-hearted, had screamed, startling him, and yanked the steering wheel. The animal escaped, but Laurie was injured, and he was only slightly shaken. Laurie suffered a head injury, resulting in a brain hemorrhage. She fell into a coma after surgery. Now Clem visited her, sitting in the room, playing on his phone while feigning concern. He brought flowers and affected a sad expression when nurses entered. They worried about him, offering sedatives. The only person Clem's act didn't fool was the doctor. That damned doctor. He looked at Clem as if he could see right through him. Clem tried to avoid Dr. Brousseau, but today he wasn't so lucky. He heard voices fall silent and was contemplating an escape when the door opened. His mother-in-law was the first to notice him. Her husband supported her as he held a handkerchief to her nose.
"Oh, Clem, you came again, my dear."
She embraced her son-in-law. Clem, donning a mournful expression, returned to the embrace. He strived to please his in-laws, glad that Laurie hadn't complained to them about their marital problems. After all, his main goal now was the company. He knew Laurie would soon become the ghost and leave everything to him. It was her own fault. She shouldn't have angered him. She even threatened divorce, as if Clem could return to his old life in that one-room apartment he'd rented in the middle of nowhere. No, he wanted everything that belonged to Laurie, her business, her apartment, her country house, and her cars. He knew he'd get it all as soon as the machines in her room signalled her final heartbeat.
"Oh, Clem, you look terrible,"
Sarah Flynn remarked.
"Your eyes are swollen and red. You're so pale. Though we're all like that now. But don't be so despondent, honey. You're the lifeblood of the company right now. Take care of yourself, at least for Laurie's sake."
Clem forced a smile. He realised his appearance conveyed deep grief, as if he couldn't sleep at night, weeping into his pillow. However, as soon as he looked up, he met the doctor's grey gaze. The neurosurgeon clutched a folder to his chest, staring thoughtfully at the visitor. The corner of his lip trembled, revealing a grin full of dislike. Clem realised that he did not fool the doctor. However, he did not interfere. Suddenly, a nurse in a pink uniform, typical of the children's wing, burst into the room. Apologising, she turned to the doctor.
"Dr. Brousseau, Polly's missing again. We've searched everywhere. She's nowhere to be found."
"Oh, Polly's at it again," he sighed, shaking his head. "Did you check the canteen? She might have smelled the buns like last time."
The doctor hurried after the nurse. Clem, realising a child was missing from the hospital, muttered to himself, "What a mess here." Noticing his mother-in-law's surprised look, he shook his head.
"Let me walk you out, okay? I just wanted to talk to you. I'll put these flowers in a vase."
Laurie's parents agreed. Clem replaced the old bouquet with the fresh one, then, without even glancing at his wife, rushed out into the corridor. As soon as the visitors left, the door of the closet to the ward creaked open. A little girl with lovely curls peeked in. Seeing no one there, she smiled and entered, clutching her new toy, a teddy bear, to her chest. Polly was an orphan who had been in the hospital for a long time. The clinic had taken her in on a charitable basis, with Dr. Brousseau himself as her patron. Polly had already undergone several surgeries and was on the mend. However, everyone else in the hospital suffered from her mischief. As soon as she was back on her feet, she began exploring the clinic, making new acquaintances with children and adults, and sneaking into offices. She was unstoppable. Dr. Brousseau often spoke to Polly, asking her not to cause trouble. She'd look at the doctor with honest blue eyes, promise to behave, but soon boredom would set in, and the clinic staff would face her idea of fun once again. Recently, Polly had learned about Laurie. She was fascinated that the beautiful woman slept all the time, just like in the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale from the book the doctor had given her. Polly began asking Dr. Brousseau about this sleeping princess. He willingly told her everything, even sharing how important it was to talk to Laurie. Polly decided this would be her new mission. She constantly snuck into Laurie's room, hiding under the bed or in an empty closet if someone walked by. The girl chatted with Laurie without expecting a response. She was quite good at one-sided conversations. Polly shared her story of how she ended up in the orphanage and the hospital. She explained that she had no mother, and her stepfather had hurt her badly. This led to her surgeries, including having part of her lovely hair cut off, which upset her. However, Dr. Brusso assured her that her baldness wasn't noticeable behind her curls, and that she was still the most beautiful girl in the world. He even gave her a dress and fancy bows to boost her confidence. Polly confided that she wished she had a daddy like Dr. Brusso. He cared for her and brought gifts, spoke with her often, and even allowed to hug him. Today, Polly brought a new present. Dr. Brusso gave me a teddy bear. You press its tummy. He records everything I say and plays it back. Even long poems, the girl explained, showing off her stuffed friend. He's just like a parrot. Then Polly began to talk about her self-proclaimed guardian. Dr. Brusso is wonderful. He'll definitely save you, Polly said, sitting next to Laurie and stroking the teddy bear's fur. He's the best doctor in the world. After a moment's thought, she added, Do you have a prince, Laurie? He could kiss you, and then you'd wake up faster. Suddenly, Polly gasped as an idea struck her. Maybe Dr. Brusso could kiss you. He looks like a prince. And you're beautiful, just like a princess. Don't worry about your missing hair either. It's nothing. Dr. Brusso will surely like you. He thinks I'm a beautiful girl. She didn't expect an answer, but she noticed Aunt Laurie's finger tremble. Polly blinked, startled by footsteps in the hallway. The girl instinctively slid under the bed, clutching her teddy bear. She thought it might be Nurse Helen or Dr. Brusso looking for her. Polly pressed her palm to her mouth to stifle a giggle, not wanting to give herself away in this impromptu game of hide-and-seek. But then Polly realized the feet of the person who had entered were unfamiliar. The voice that followed was strange and unpleasant. Still lying there, the unfamiliar man muttered with obvious disdain. I'm sick of looking at you. He fell silent for a moment, then stomped his foot nervously before stepping forward. You know what that jerk Brusso said? That you can hear me. So, listen up if you can. You're a pain in the ass, got it? When are you going to die? How long are you going to torture us all? Even your parents would be better off if you gave up already. He spat. Even if you open your eyes, what's the point? You won't be the same person. You'll be a cripple. Miracles don't happen, Laurie. Understand? I won't take care of you, that's for sure. No reason to ruin anyone's life. He licked his lips. Polly lay frozen in fear, clutching her teddy bear to her chest. The evil man had terrified her. She was grateful that Teddy was there to protect her. Listen, you're tired too, aren't you? The man hissed. Should I help you? Put you out of your misery? You don't know how much I'm looking forward to it. How often I think about it. Clem wasn't lying. His hand reached for the machines, but his fingers trembled. He didn't have the courage, and he feared someone would discover his involvement and he'd end up in jail. No, he would wait. Clem lingered, telling Laurie how he would live without her and manage the company. He even mentioned how fortunate the incident had been, blaming Laurie and boasting about bribing the police with her money. Then he left. Polly didn't immediately crawl out from under the bed. She lay there shaking and crying, terrified. Dr. Brusso found her. He wanted to scold her, but seeing the girl's face, he only looked concerned. Honey, what's wrong? Are you hurt?
No, I feel sorry for the princess. An evil man came. Polly sobbed, hugging the doctor's neck and burying her face. The doctor didn't immediately understand
what the little girl was saying. He assumed the child was indulging in fantasies again. Dr. Brusso looked at Polly. "Sweetie, you shouldn't play here. It's very dangerous. You could accidentally harm the patient."
"But Laurie listens to me," the little girl protested. "I love her. You said that those who are loved wake up faster. And she moved her finger."
"What?" the doctor gasped.
"She moved her finger, like this,"
Polly demonstrated with her little finger. The man handed Polly to the nurse and sent her to the children's wing while he tended to Laurie. Polly was right. The woman was improving. A couple of days later, the Flynns received joyous news. Their daughter had regained consciousness. It was too early to celebrate fully, but Laurie was making remarkable progress. The doctors cared for her, and soon it became clear. Laurie had won. She would be able to return to her former full life. As soon as visitors were allowed, Polly seized her chance. The doctor brought her in, apologizing in advance to the patient. "Polly has been trying to visit you despite the rules. She wanted to see you." Laurie smiled warmly at the girl.
"I know,"
she said. Then she confessed shyly,
"I think I heard the girl's voice. I thought I was dreaming of my daughter, even though I don't have one." "I could be her. I don't have a mum," the girl declared matter-of-factly. "Oh, and Dr. Brusso could be my daddy. Don't you want to marry him? He could kiss you."
The doctor and the patient looked at each other, bewildered. "Polly, that's not appropriate," he admonished gently.
"Darling, I already have a husband,"
Laurie said sadly.
"An evil man," Polly gasped. "He doesn't love you. He wanted you gone."
Laurie recoiled. The doctor, alarmed by the patient's condition, moved to take the child away, but Laurie stopped him.
"Wait,
You know, while I was in a coma, I sometimes heard things, but now I can't separate reality from dreams. My mum was crying constantly. That's what I remember. But what drew me most was the sound of the girl's voice. I also think I heard Clem's voice. What he said. His words are frightening. Tell me, Polly, what did you hear?" Polly, now alert, looked at the doctor and exclaimed,
"I must bring the teddy bear. He will tell everything. He heard it all too."
The doctor sighed, considering the little girl's vivid imagination, yet Polly insisted that the adults listen to the teddy bear. They relented and were stunned by what they heard. From that moment on, Polly kept the teddy bear in the far corner of the room as tangible evidence. She had already heard the evil uncle's voice and feared recording anything else. Now, the toy's creaking mechanism revealed Clem's desire to rid himself of his wife. Laurie realized she hadn't imagined her husband's words. A couple of hours later, when Clem arrived at the hospital, flashing a smile and feigning joy at his wife's improved health, the neurosurgeon stopped him. "What the hell?" Clem protested indignantly. "I can't let you in. Laurie's condition is still unstable. She's had visitors today and needs rest." The doctor lied. "But since you're here, please come to my office. We need to talk." Clem grumbled but obediently followed Dr. Brusso, striving to maintain his facade of concern. He was unaware that he was walking straight into a trap. In the office, Dr. Brusso presented the bear and played the recording. Clem paled and rushed towards the doctor. "Listen, I was just in shock. Who would want a disabled wife, huh? That's why I was angry, talking nonsense." He then looked at the surgeon hopefully. "What do you want for your silence?" "The truth," said the doctor. "Tell me everything as it happened. I'm writing a paper on human behavior, a scientific paper. I'm not interested in money." Clem, believing he'd gotten off easily, blurted out everything. He wasn't even afraid to lie, and he lacked the wit to concoct a believable story quickly. Polly would have done much better. Clem was unaware that everyone was listening. Laurie, her parents, and 2 incorruptible police officers. The man was immediately arrested, charged with attempted murder of his wife, bribery, and several other crimes. Laurie and Clem's marriage was annulled. Laurie recovered swiftly, bolstered by the support of her parents, Polly and Dr. Brousseau. When the time came to discharge Polly from the hospital, she wept bitterly, reluctant to part with Laurie. The woman's heart melted. "I'll take you home," she promised, kissing the top of the girl's head. "You're already my daughter. I thought you were my daughter while I was in a coma. I followed your voice. I came back to you, Polly. I know that now." Laurie kept her word. She adopted Polly. Later, Dr. Brousseau became part of their family. He loved both girls dearly. 2 years later, Dr. Brousseau and Laurie welcomed a son. In this tale, only the teddy bear didn't find his happy ending. Alas, he was taken as evidence and never returned. However, he didn't mind, for he had protected the one he loved, Polly. Polly knew with certainty, even as she grew older, that fairy tales could become reality, and cherished dreams could come true. After all, her dream of a happy family had materialized, and she had witnessed how a sleeping princess found her prince. Wasn't that a genuine miracle? Margaret Marks had been sitting by her room's door for 3 hours, listening intently. She desperately wanted to go to the kitchen. She was hungry, but she couldn't. Her daughter-in-law had occupied the kitchen all this time. First, she prepared breakfast, then fed her daughter and husband, Mrs. Marks's son. Now she was just sitting there, probably drinking coffee, eating sandwiches and watching TV. Mrs. Marks could hear one program ending and another beginning. Pamela remained in the kitchen, as if she couldn't watch TV in the living room. Mrs. Marks understood her daughter-in-law's behaviour. It was to show her who was in charge. Absurdly, but the elderly woman could barely leave her tiny room without permission in her own house. Everything about Mrs. Marks irritated her daughter-in-law. How she walked, talked, even breathed. Recently, she told Bradley that her mother was driving her crazy. She drops crumbs when she eats, sometimes breaks dishes because her hands are hooked, as she put it, and she's always moaning and sniffling like a hippopotamus. Pamela said all this loudly, ensuring her mother-in-law could hear. "Tell your mother to stay out of my sight," Pamela shouted. "You know she's tormenting me on purpose, and I'm pregnant. I can't be stressed." Bradley mumbled something, and Pamela continued her demands. "When I'm in the kitchen, don't let her come in. She should eat in her room. Tell her to use the bathroom when I'm not at home. And I want her to be neater. I'm sick of cleaning up after her, and let her dry her clothes in her room. She's covered the whole yard. It's embarrassing to go outside because of her clothes hanging around." Mrs. Marks listened to all this, fighting back tears. How could it be? To hear Pamela, she was careless and untidy. But that wasn't true. Mrs. Marks had always been neat. It was just that age was taking its toll. Indeed, sometimes at dinner she might drop food, and crumbs would escape her toothless mouth. At such times her daughter-in-law would grimace and swear. Her 15-year-old daughter Chloe also showed her displeasure. Mrs. Marks realized the sight was probably unpleasant, so she tried her best to please her new daughter-in-law, eager to wash dishes or cook something. But again, everything was wrong. In Pamela's opinion, the old woman washed dishes poorly, leaving food stuck to forks and stains on plates. Sometimes a cup or plate would slip from the old woman's hands, shattering on the floor. Pamela would explode, screaming that Mrs. Marks was useless. When the elderly woman reached for the broom, Pamela angrily snatched it away. "I'll clean it myself," the the daughter-in-law almost growled. "You're hopeless. You'll only spread the shards around. Go to your room and stay there." At first, Mrs. Marks thought her daughter-in-law was speaking in a spark of anger and would forget about it. Then she realized Pamela had made up her mind. One day, her son came to the elderly lady and, avoiding eye contact, said it would be better if she left her room only in emergencies. "Stay there, have your knitting and books, sleep more," said Bradley. "We'll bring food to your room." "How can this be, my son?" Mrs. Marks gasped. "I can't even take a step in my own house. It's inhumane." "Don't be dramatic," Bradley dismissed her. "You can see Pamela is having a hard time, so don't upset her. If you don't want to eat in your room, go to the kitchen when she's not there, and do your laundry when Pamela is out. I'll hang some ropes in your room so you can dry clothes there." Bradley left without listening to Mrs. Marks' arguments, presenting her with a fait accompli. Of course, the elderly woman didn't want to see her daughter-in-law too often. It would always result in a scandal. So she accepted her son's condition. She went to the kitchen to eat when no one was there. Now, sitting by the door, she waited patiently for Pamela to leave the kitchen. But Pamela, as if on purpose, had no intention of going anywhere. Mrs. Marks needed to take her medicine, which had to be taken after meals. She was already starting to shake, either from hunger or from skipping the pills. Finally, she made up her mind, opened the door of her room, and went into the kitchen. Pamela was sitting at the table, with one foot on her leg, lazily sipping coffee, stroking her belly, and watching a health program. When she saw her mother-in-law, she grimaced. "You came?" Pamela snorted. "Couldn't you wait? We told you to stay in your room and keep your head down while I'm here." "Pamela, I'm starving, and it's time for my pills," said Mrs. Marks, as if justifying herself. "Pills?" Pamela grinned evilly. "Why the hell should you take them? Are you going to live 2 lives?" "Well, I'll live as long as God has given me," Mrs. Marks replied humbly and remarked, "Pamela, you shouldn't drink coffee. At your stage of pregnancy, it's harmful." "Are you going to teach me how to live?" Pamela stormed out. "Take your food and go to your room. Old fool, you've already been sent to the cemetery and you still can't get it. Taking pills to cure yourself. It's better for everyone if you die." These words made Mrs. Marks's hands shake and tears come to her eyes. She tried to brew herself a tea bag, but the cup slipped out of her trembling hands. Pamela shrieked in rage. She jumped up, grabbed Mrs. Marks by her frail shoulders, and pushed her back into the room. Then, while the elderly woman was sobbing on the sofa, Pamela burst in again. She put a plate and a mug in front of her mother-in-law, then left, slamming the door. There were pieces of bread, some of yesterday's stale porridge, and half a wilted cucumber. The mug contained water, apparently straight from the tap. Mrs. Marks, choking on her tears, took a piece of bread and, despite the offence and humiliation, began to chew. She was starving. As she ate, the elderly woman remembered her life and the events that led to what was happening in her house. Mrs. Marks came to this village many years ago on assignment after graduating from a pedagogical school. She taught geography and biology at the local school. At first, Margaret dreamed that after working the allotted time, she would return to her homeland. But then she met her love. Horace was a handsome guy. All the village beauties had their eyes on him, but he chose Margaret, a modest girl. Though she seemed unremarkable, Horace fell in love with her bottomless blue eyes and asked her to marry him. Margaret agreed, because by that time she herself thought only of Horace. They began their life together. Everything seemed fine, but they had no children. Mrs. Marks visited all the doctors, even travelling to the capital for this issue, but everywhere the answer was the same. She was healthy. Maybe her husband had a problem, but Horace refused to check his health, insisting he was fine. And how could he not be fine when he knew for certain that a woman from the neighbouring village had gotten pregnant with him? Yes, then she had gotten rid of the unwanted issue, but to Orris this was irrefutable proof of his virility. Margaret knew Orris was cheating on her. Even after the wedding, he continued his affairs, but she loved him very much, and he loved her in his own way. Every time after his infidelities, he would repent to his wife on his knees. She always forgave him. But over the years, it became increasingly difficult to tolerate his unfaithfulness. When Mrs. Marks approached 40, she decided to divorce Orris. She planned to leave everything behind and return to her homeland, where her mother's house still stood. Upon hearing this, Orris fell to his knees as he used to, begging her not to leave. As Mrs. Marks listened to his pleas, she suddenly realized Orris didn't truly love her. He simply found it convenient to live with her. The house was always in order, meals were delicious, and her status as a local intellectual soothed his ego. Orris had spent his entire life as a simple tractor driver on the collective farm. Determined, Mrs. Marks packed her belongings and even went to the school to submit her resignation. However, in the principal's office, she suddenly fell ill and lost consciousness. She awoke in the hospital with Orris sitting beside her, clutching her hand and biting his lips anxiously. Then the doctor entered the room. To their astonishment, Mrs. Marks was pregnant. It was like a bolt from the blue. She had long since given up hope of becoming a mother, and yet here it was. Naturally, all thoughts of divorce vanished, and she withdrew her resignation. Mrs. Marks and Orris reconciled, experiencing a second honeymoon after years of marriage. Orris changed dramatically. He became attentive, helpful and faithful. Despite a challenging pregnancy, Mrs. Marks safely gave birth to a daughter. Their joy knew no bounds as life took on new meaning. The family flourished. When Annabelle was 3, Mrs. Marks became pregnant again. Village gossips joked that the teacher would give Orris a whole brood of children in his old age. However, after Mrs. Marks gave birth to a son, doctors strictly advised against further pregnancies due to her age and newly discovered heart problems. With a son and daughter, what more could they want? The family enjoyed 10 blissful years together. Orris doted on his wife, adored his children, and left his past behind. Mrs. Marks never mentioned it. Tragedy struck when Orris died in a tractor accident. He failed to notice a piece of iron protruding from the field road and overturned with the tractor. The machinery was barely damaged, but Orris didn't even make it to the hospital. Mrs. Marks found herself alone with 2 children. Times were tough, but she steeled herself, vowing to overcome all obstacles and raise her children to be upstanding individuals. She juggled her teaching job, took a part-time job at the local farm, all to keep her children fed. Annabelle and Bradley helped their mother in any possible way, but when they finished school, each left for the city to pursue higher education. Mrs. Marks insisted on this, always emphasizing the importance of a college. Though it was challenging to support their education single-handedly, she managed. Annabelle graduated with an economics degree, while Bradley completed a highway engineering program. Both children settled in the city. Annabelle secured a position at a reputable firm and married a businessman, having 2 children of her own. Initially, she and her family visited Mrs. Marks in the village, but lately their busy lives have made visits scarce. Mrs. Marks understood and didn't take offence. Annabelle and her husband run a demanding business. Of course, she wished she could see her grandchildren more often, but as city dwellers they showed little interest in village life. Bradley's life took an unexpected and not so good turn. After graduating from college, he bounced from one job to another, never quite finding his footing. After years of this nomadic career path, he headed north to build roads. There, He seemed to settle in and things were going well. The only thing that worried Mrs. Marks was his reluctance to marry. She chalked it up to genetics. He was, like his father, a wanderer. Orris had been lucky to meet Mrs. Marks, but fate hadn't been as kind to Bradley. But then a few years ago, Bradley announced his marriage to Pamela, who already had a child from a previous relationship. Mrs. Marks saw no issue with this. Bradley became both a husband and father at once, which she hoped would instill a sense of responsibility in him. Bradley seemed to take to his new role seriously, working hard and earning well. However, he soon returned to the state where his mother lived. It transpired that in the north he'd narrowly avoided criminal charges for fraud involving materials. Though the investigation cleared him from accused to witness, he could no longer work at his former job, prompting his return. For several years, Bradley lived in the city with Pamela and her daughter, Chloe. Life wasn't easy. Bradley struggled to find steady employment, and they had to rent an apartment. Then one day, he approached his mother about moving his family in with her. He'd already secured a job at the local road department. Mrs. Marks, who had only met her daughter-in-law a couple of times and mostly communicated by phone, agreed. Her son had thought it through well. They would live together, with Pamela helping the aging mother-in-law with household chores, and Chloe, her teenage daughter, pitching in too. Plus, Pamela was expecting a baby. News that thrilled Mrs. Marks. While she had accepted Chloe, the prospect of Bradley having his own child felt particularly special. Soon her son's family moved in. Mrs. Marks welcomed them warmly, immediately encouraging Chloe to call her grandmother. The teenager merely curled her lips, saying nothing, but the elderly woman paid it no mind. She knew Chloe would need time to adjust. Bradley suggested his mother move into the small room, leaving the spacious one for Chloe and the bedroom for him and Pamela. Mrs. Marks agreed without fuss, content with the arrangement. One day Bradley arrived with some papers and a notary. He explained that Mrs. Marks needed to sign these documents so he could handle the utility bills, all the paperwork, and issues with authorities without her presence. Trusting her son implicitly, and recognizing the notary as Helen, her former student, the elderly woman signed without reading. Only later did she discover the true nature of what she had signed, a deed gifting the house to her son. The revelation came during an argument with Pamela over a poorly washed cup. "My dear," the elderly woman calmly responded, "you're living in my house. Show some respect." "Your house?" Pamela sneered. "It's our house now." "How can that be? I'm still alive. When I die, Bradley and Annabelle will inherit everything." "I don't think so," the daughter-in-law shouted. "You signed a deed of gift to Bradley. What did you think the notary was for? You old fool." Now Mrs. Marks suddenly realized what kind of papers she had signed. Her son had deceived her, and this Helen, how much had they paid her? That day Mrs. Marks sat in her room, crying almost all day. When her son came home from work, she called him and asked directly if it was true about the notary in her house. "Mum, why are you worried?" Bradley replied irritably. "I just solved all the problems. It's better for everyone. Pamela and I have our own corner now. No one is kicking you out." "Son, you tricked me," exclaimed Mrs. Marks. "Don't dramatize it." Bradley waved her off. "I just made life easier for everyone. What would happen if you die and the house isn't registered? We'd have to deal with inheritance, pay for registration, and solve problems with Annabelle. Why does she need this house? She has a great mansion in the city, and I have no corner. Everything's fair." "Son, but I'm still alive," Mrs. Marks said, barely audible and shocked. "So live. Who's stopping you?" Bradley muttered as he left the room. From that moment on, Mrs. Marks's life became a real torment. Pamela constantly nagged. Chloe treated her with contempt, as if she were invincible, and Bradley only relayed his wife's complaints to his mother. In her own house, Mrs. Marks was no longer the mistress, and was afraid to leave her room. Her conscience wouldn't allow her to complain to anyone, or make a fuss about her son's wrongdoing. Why air the family's dirty laundry? Why dishonour her son? She'd live out her life somehow. The neighbours, who used to visit Mrs. Marks often, stopped coming because Pamela had driven them all away. Sometimes they'd see Granny Margaret in the yard and ask about her life with her son's family. But the elderly woman would only avert her eyes. She'd say everything was fine and hurry home, fighting back tears and the lump in her throat. That morning, eating stale bread, Mrs. Marks decided to call her daughter. She called occasionally, but had never mentioned anything negative about her life. Now she decided to do it. She wanted Annabel to know how unfairly Bradley had acted and how poorly she was being treated. Annabel didn't pick up right away, and when she did, her voice was irritated. "Yes, Mum, what is it? Be quick. I'm heading to the tax office," she said abruptly.
"Daughter, I wanted to talk to you. I'm in trouble here," sobbed the elderly woman, quickly recounting all the troubles that had befallen her. Annabel listened silently for a moment, then burst into profanity about Bradley's deception. "Mother, you should have looked at what you were signing," she reproached. "Well, that's how it turned out, my daughter,"
her mother replied with a heavy sigh, then added with a tremor in her voice,
"Annabel, I was thinking, maybe you could take me in? I can't stay here any longer. I'm exhausted. You and Ben have a big house, so I'll just need a little room. I'll be as quiet as a mouse. It's better to live with my own daughter than with my daughter-in-law. I'll spend more time with my grandchildren, bake them pancakes and cakes."
"Mum, what are you saying?" exclaimed Annabel indignantly. "What are you thinking? I can't take you in. Ben and I have busy schedules, and we're used to resting when we're at home. And you're asking me to take care of you after work?"
"Who's there to take care of? I'm on my own feet, thank God," Mrs. Marks timidly remarked.
"And what about later? Mother, you're almost 80. You need to think ahead," Annabel replied sharply. "No, don't even ask. Live with Bradley. You're used to everything there, but here it's the city with its own rules. And the grandchildren? They're quite grown up now. You don't need to look after them. Why would they need your pies and pancakes? They prefer pizza and rolls." Annabel ended the conversation abruptly, not listening to her mother any more. Mrs. Marks held the phone to her ear for a long time, listening to the short beeps. Her heart ached. Here she was in her old age. Her daughter didn't want her. Her son danced to his wife's tune, who hated her. Oh, how painful it was to realize that her own children had so easily forgotten all the good she had done for them. She had risked her life to bring them into this world, and this was their thanks to her. Nothing changed in the following days. Mrs. Marks tried to stay out of her daughter-in-law's sight, and when they ran into each other in the hallway, she was sure to hear Pamela hissing after her. "When will you die?" It was useless to complain to her son, so the elderly woman only cried in her room. Then one morning she heard Annabel's voice in the yard, arguing with her brother. The elderly mother thought Annabel would stand up for her now, maybe even take her in. Mrs. Marks, forgetting the hateful glances of her daughter-in-law, came out of her hiding place and hurried outside. But she froze halfway, hearing the conversation of her children. "You've taken over the house. You've become the owner of it. All right, to hell with it. I have no claim on this wreck anyway," Annabel said. "But you could think about our mother, couldn't you? If she bothers you, why didn't you turn to social services? Why do I have to solve all these problems from the city?"
"I didn't think about it," Bradley mumbled. "She lives here and I don't mind at all."
"Do you know that she asked to come to me? How can you imagine it? Am I to carry night pots from her?" Annabel exclaimed.
"And you think I should?"
Bradley raised his voice.
"That's the last thing we need. Or is Pamela supposed to?"
"Then why are you delaying? You should have taken her to the nursing home long ago. But as usual, I am the only one to solve these problems. Do you know how much money it cost me?" Annabel replied and added more calmly, "Okay, stop talking useless. We have to pack her up. They said that she should be delivered by lunchtime. Go tell her."
"Let's go together,"
Bradley said hesitantly. They stood in the yard, hesitating to enter the house. Mrs. Marks helped them and came out herself.
"Bradley, Annabel," she said confusedly. "How can it be? What are you up to?"
The son and daughter looked at each other, and Annabel, exhaling, raised her head. "Mum, don't worry so much. It's just that you're moving to the nursing home today. I've already arranged everything. It's that home in a neighbouring village."
"Nursing home?" Mrs. Marks repeated in a trembling voice. "That's where they take all sorts of homeless people and ex-criminals and alcoholics whose children have abandoned them."
"Mum, no one is abandoning you." Annabel raised her voice. "But understand, you can't go on like this. I can't take you in. Bradley is already tired of your antics. How you make his pregnant wife nervous. A care home is the best option. And it's not true that only antisocial personalities live there. I found out. There are nice grandmothers, grandfathers. You'll find friends, and even a boyfriend."
"I don't need suitors," mumbled Mrs. Marks. "I want to stay at home. This is my home."
"It's not yours any more," shouted Pamela from the living room, who had heard the whole conversation. Mrs. Marks only shrugged her shoulders at this remark and looked at her son and daughter in confusion.
"Children, what are you doing? I don't want to go to the care home. I can't. I will die there," she whispered in tears.
"Okay, Mum, enough,"
Bradley exclaimed, grabbed the elderly woman by the arm and pulled her into the house. "How do you not realize that you are just interfering with our lives? You have lived your life. Let us live too. Let's go pack." He forced his mother into her room. Pamela immediately threw a large bag at her feet and began to throw the elderly woman's things into it chaotically. Bradley helped her. Mrs. Marks didn't even see what they threw in there.
"That's enough," said Bradley. "If we forget something, we'll bring it back later."
And he again grabbed the weeping mother by the hand, took her outside, and got her in Annabel's car. The daughter had been waiting patiently in the yard all this time. "Let's go. They're already waiting for us," she said, starting the engine. "Bradley, get in too." But Bradley shook his head and ran into the house. Annabel spat and drove off, trying not to look at the back seat where her mother was crying. 30 minutes later, the right settlement appeared. Here was the care home, a 2-story old grey building, dirty window frames cracked over time, thickets of maple all around, and in some places a leaky fence. All this only increased Mrs. Marks's pain and horror.
"Daughter, will I live here?" she whispered fearfully.
"Why not? It's fine," Annabel answered cheerfully, turning off the engine. "Nature, silence, peace, and the inside is much better than the outside. I've seen pictures of the rooms. Come on, let's go." On cotton legs, the elderly woman got out of the car and headed towards the building. She had already resigned herself to her fate. Her last years would be spent in this horrible place. Years? No, Mrs. Marks was sure that she wouldn't last even a few months here. She stepped to the threshold and froze in horror. At the door stood a large rusty bucket full of cigarette butts. God, what kind of people live here? From the depths of the building wafted something foul and musty. Mrs. Marks could barely hold back a fit of nausea. She looked helplessly at her daughter, her gaze pleading and despairing. But Annabel was calmly rummaging around in the trunk, pulling out the bag with her mother's belongings. The elderly woman, completely downcast, turned and stepped over the threshold. Suddenly, a black SUV flung up to the building, braked sharply, and the driver's door slammed. A man, paying no attention to Annabel, ran up to the porch. "Mrs. Marks, don't go there!" he shouted. The elderly woman, already standing in the vestibule, turned around in surprise. Squinting blindly, she tried to make out who the man was. A short, stout, middle-aged man, about Bradley's age, red-haired with whitish eyebrows. He reminded her of someone. Chet! Mrs. Marks gasped suddenly, recognizing her former pupil. "It's me, Mrs. Marks," the man smiled. "I've been following you all the way. I could hardly catch up with you." "Why?" The elderly woman looked at him confusedly. "Because you won't live here," Chet said confidently. "Mrs. Marks, since your children are abandoning you, I offer you my help. Will you live with me?" "You?" Mrs. Marks blinked rapidly, crying, not knowing what to say. Chet. He had been the most problematic student in the school, and she was his class teacher. Chet often fought, studied poorly, and had almost no friends. Mrs. Marks knew the root of it all, his family. Chet's parents were heavy drinkers. Mrs. Marks, as a class teacher, often visited them, exhorted them, shamed them, tried to convince them to take care of their son's upbringing, but to no avail. They drank and parted away the pennies they earned from odd jobs. Chet always wore old clothes, unkempt, hungry, and angry. Mrs. Marks repeatedly appealed to the Department of Education, to Child Protective Services, to the Juvenile Department, to somehow influence Chet's parents. But in those years, everyone seemed indifferent to this family's plight. Mrs. Marks felt sorry for the boy, so she gave him Bradley's clothes. Her son was a year older. By the way, Bradley and Annabel, as well as the other children, didn't understand her, even condemned her. Why did she bother with the son of an alcoholic? Nevertheless, Mrs. Marks gave Chet some money for school lunches and took him to the local hairdresser. Perhaps she was the only one who saw in this boy not a hellion, but just an unhappy child, who, like a hedgehog, defended himself from the whole world. At first, Chet was embarrassed to accept her help, but Mrs. Marks convinced him that it was the right thing to do, and he believed her. Geography even became his favourite subject at school. By graduation time, the boy had somehow calmed down, even passing his exams without a single C. Then his parents poisoned themselves with some toxic stuff and died. Mrs. Marks personally accompanied him to the orphanage and admonished him not to lose his way, to hold on, to behave with dignity. She also promised to visit him at the orphanage. Mrs. Marks fulfilled her promise. Until Chet graduated from the orphanage, she visited him monthly, bringing treats. She even saw him off to the army, giving him money despite his reluctance. "You must take," she insisted. After that, they lost touch. Chet wrote twice, then silence. Mrs. Marks tried to find out what happened, but to no avail. It seemed as if Chet had vanished into a conflict zone. Time passed, and she forgot her former student, until they unexpectedly met at the threshold of a nursing home. "Don't go in there," Chet pleaded. "What do you mean, don't go in there?" Annabel snapped, lugging the bag. She recognised Chet too. "Chet, you should leave. We'll manage without you." "Annabel, you go," Chet replied calmly. "Mrs. Marks and I will figure this out." "Mother, why are you listening to that thug?" Annabel exclaimed. "Can't you see he's after something? He probably thinks you have a huge pension." "Well, Chet, her pension is miserable. It won't be profitable for you. Now get lost." "Annabel, not everything is about money," Chet responded, still gentle. "I won't let Mrs. Marks end up in a nursing home. If her own children aren't ashamed, my conscience won't allow it. Mrs. Marks, let's go to my car. Don't worry, you'll be fine at my place. I have a nice house and family. We'll take good care of you." Mrs. Marks took a step towards him. "Mum, wake up!" Annabel shouted. "Who are you going to live with? You don't even know him." "Daughter, it turned out that I don't know you and Bradley either," the elderly woman replied weakly. "Fine, do what you want," Annabel yelled, throwing her bag at her feet before storming off to her car. "But don't call me again or complain. I'm done taking care of you." "Yeah, we don't need that kind of care," Chet retorted, picking up the bag. "Mrs. Marks, let's go." The elderly woman followed Chet to his car as Annabel sped away, leaving a cloud of dust. From the nursing home windows, residents watched the pair, some curious, some envious. On the drive, Chet shared his story. He'd served in the army, was in a hot spot and survived. After returning, he briefly fell in with a bad crowd, but managed to escape. He found his footing, working hard at various jobs, and eventually met Nancy, also from an orphanage. Gradually, their lives improved. Now Chet owned a successful auto business, a nice big house. His wife Nancy had given birth to 3 children and ran her own bakery. Recently, Chet felt compelled to visit his parents' graves. Though they had been miserable, they had given him life. He also wanted to see Mrs. Marks, the only person who had believed in him as a child, supported him, and offered wise counsel. Perhaps that's why he had found the right path. He arrived in the village just after Annabel had taken Mrs. Marks away. Neighbours told him what they'd overheard Annabel and Bradley say to their mother. Chet felt deeply hurt for Mrs. Marks. He rushed to the nursing home, calling Nancy en route to explain everything. She suggested taking in Mrs. Marks, amazing Chet with how well she understood his thoughts. "Nancy, I'm sure we're doing the right thing," he said. "Of course we are. We'll have a mother, and our children will have a grandmother. It's wonderful," she replied with a smile. And so Chet drove back to the city with his favourite teacher, now his dearest person. As time passed, neither Chet, Nancy, nor Mrs. Marks regretted their decision. For the first time in years, the old woman felt warmth and care, which she reciprocated abundantly with her new family. As for Annabel and Bradley, they never called to check on their mother. They remained indifferent. Annabel was divorcing her husband and dividing their property. Bradley, jobless again, stayed home with his newborn son, while his wife gallivanted about. Everyone got what they deserved. As a child, Mary often tested her mother's patience with insistent requests for a sibling. "Daughter, we can't. I have to work, or how will we live?" her mother explained. "Mummy, you work and I'll take care of the little one. I'll feed, dress and walk them. I can do it all myself. Please." "Mary, you have to go to school, remember?" "I'll take my sister or brother with me. They'll sleep in the stroller during lessons," Mary fantasized. Mum only smiled tightly and changed the subject. Soon enough, Mary stopped begging for a baby. She quickly grew up and realized how much energy her mother spent, ensuring they had everything they needed. They had always lived alone, without even a grandmother. Helen, Mary's mum, grew up in an orphanage. She worked as a procedural nurse, and Mary often visited her at work after school. She knew everyone there and felt at home. When adults asked what she wanted to be when she grew up, Mary answered without hesitation, "A doctor, of course." Helen's friends were a bit envious. "Your Mary is so serious. You don't have to monitor her studies at all. She's pretty with a lovely figure, yet all she thinks about is studying. She's so sensible. It's a miracle." "Mary knows there's no one to help her," Helen explained candidly. "She wants to go to medical school, which is very challenging to get a scholarship there." Later, when Mary did secure a scholarship and began studying there, the same friends of her mother wondered, why did Mary choose pediatrics? Children are fussy. Parents are always dissatisfied. It's stressful work. She should have gone into dentistry. It's a gold mine. She chose it herself. Helen shrugged. She loves children, so she went into pediatrics. "It'll be harder to earn good money with that speciality," the curious sympathized. "You should have at least advised her." Helen remained silent. Yes, they lived poorly, but she couldn't decide for her daughter. Helen's story was simple. Her beloved Boris turned out to be married with 2 sons. Upon learning this, young, naive Helen was so shocked that she couldn't accuse him or start sorting things out. She simply lied that she'd found someone else and they were breaking up. She thought this might hurt his ego a little and make it easier for her to survive the collapse of her hopes. Helen moved to a big city, quickly found a job, but soon learnt she was pregnant. It was too late for other options. The only choice was to give birth. Amanda, a friend from the orphanage, advised, "Don't worry, you can always give birth and leave the baby at the hospital. They'll understand. You're alone, low income from an orphanage. You just started working. You're not in a position to have children." "Amanda, are you crazy?" Helen asked sadly, without anger. "Leave a child to grow up in an orphanage? Like you and me?" "We were just unlucky. We were older when we lost our parents. There's a waiting list for healthy babies from healthy mothers. A wealthy couple will adopt your baby, and their life will be much better than with you." "That's debatable," Helen declared stubbornly. "Money matters, but it's not everything." She knew she could never abandon her child. She would raise them herself. A colleague at work supported her. "I was born after the war, and it's difficult to imagine how my mother and other women managed. But we all grew up. No one starved. Most of my childhood friends became good people. Some even became successful. Of course, times are different now and children's needs have changed, but the love between mother and child remains. Life can surprise you. You'll have a precious little person, and you'll find strength for everything." Helen was scared, feeling foolish and helpless, but she decided not to dwell on her fears. Her daughter was born, weighing only 3 kilograms, with huge blue eyes. Helen named her Mary, hoping a girl with such a beautiful name would have a beautiful destiny. And now Mary had grown up and become a medical student. In her 3rd year of studies, after passing the nursing exam, Mary received her certification to work as a nurse. She had been waiting for this opportunity since her 1st year, eager to support herself and gain valuable experience for her future career. Soon, Mary was hired at the hospital's paediatric department for the evening and night shift. Her mother worried that work might affect her studies, but was pleasantly surprised to see energetic Mary successfully juggling both. Mary herself wasn't surprised at how quickly she adapted to her first job. Perhaps it was the familiar atmosphere from her childhood visits, or maybe it was the interesting team in paediatrics. The nurses of various ages were all positive and sociable. The doctors were too. With Dr. Aaron Logan, who had graduated 5 years ago from the same paediatric faculty where Mary now studied, the relationship was almost friendly. Mary immediately liked his way of communicating with patients and colleagues. Not talkative, without arrogance or irritability, with a calm sense of humour. This doctor appealed to her. Mary was happy when their shifts coincided. She didn't know how, but she was certain he enjoyed these coincidences too. As the noisy children's ward quieted down for the night, Mary and Aaron often chatted softly at the nurses' station. They discussed faculty, teachers, exams, and various cases from practice that Aaron had accumulated over his years of work. Mary didn't need to check the schedule to know when Aaron was on duty with her. He'd always place a large candy bar on her desk when he arrived.
"It's for business, to keep me from getting too sleepy on the night shift,"
he explained. "Thank you. Bitter, just the way I like it," Mary gratefully replied.
"You mentioned once that you prefer bitter. I have a good memory. Can't help it."
When alone, they spoke on a first-name basis. It had just happened naturally. In the presence of colleagues, young patients, and their parents, they used the formal way, of course. When telling her mum about work, Mary often mentioned Aaron. She didn't suspect anything unusual until her mum cautioned one night.
"Be careful, Mary."
"About what?" Mary asked, confused.
"With that Aaron you like so much. You know how charming these seemingly perfect guys can be when they want something. He seems interested in you, but he's still sizing you up, figuring out how to approach you."
"Mum, you should write novels. What ulterior motive could Aaron have? We're just co-workers with a great working relationship and a bit of friendship. We've never even met outside work, and you're already seeing danger."
All right. No need to get defensive."
Mum smiled, trying to sound cheerful and calm.
"Just don't get too carried away, that's all."
After her mum's words, Mary reflected. Perhaps Aaron, as she was used to calling him, did occupy her thoughts too often. To be honest, he was in them almost constantly, and that was unnecessary. She might invent all sorts of fantasies, believe in them, and expect something extraordinary from Aaron, who was unaware of her thoughts and hadn't done anything special to inspire them. Her mum never spoke ill of men, unlike some of her friends' mothers. She didn't say much about Mary's father either, but there was no bitterness. It was all beautiful, vivid, nice to remember, except that he turned out to be married with children. When he made promises to me, he believed them himself. Thus Mary was accustomed to approaching men with caution. They might say one thing and think another, simply because that's how they are. One should always remember that and not take what they say too seriously. Really, she should ensure that her relationship with Aaron remained purely friendly. It would definitely be better for her that way. "Mary, how do you feel about travelling?" Aaron asked by way of greeting. Her night shift was about to begin. "I don't know. I haven't really travelled," Mary shrugged. "We usually just went out of town on my mum's vacation, or on some excursions, or to her friend's dasher, but of course I'd love to travel someday."
"Would a business trip suffice for now? You're on vacation. You've finished your exams. You could use a change of scenery."
"Who would send me on a business trip?" Mary laughed softly. "An indispensable nurse, sharing her vast experience. That's fantastic."
"Not at all fantastic. I'm being sent, aren't I?"
Aaron said with a smile. "I'm going to the neighbouring region to consult at a small regional hospital's children department. There's an inexperienced paediatrician there, barely 6 months on the job, who's having trouble with a diagnosis. It's about an 8-year-old girl with a respiratory illness that looks like bronchial asthma, but we need to be sure. So, will you come along for company?" Mary was slightly confused, unsure if Aaron was joking or serious. "You need a support group for your first business trip?" she asked. "Well, then I'll go. Co-workers should support each other." "Mary, I'm serious. I can really arrange for you to come on this business trip with me. It's valuable experience for a future doctor. This regional hospital doesn't have many technical capabilities, so it all depends on people. It's up to us to do a good job. Aaron, if I can really go too, I agree, Mary replied, trying hard not to betray her joy. Of course, she heeded her mum's advice. They had a trusting relationship. She feared her fondness for Aaron might get out of hand and lead to regrettable consequences. After all, she had heard stories of women quitting good jobs because of office romances. Mary didn't want to repeat such a scenario, but her desire to know Aaron better and interact with him outside work was stronger. Perhaps she was being too cautious, even cowardly. Aaron was a grown man, and if she didn't provoke him, nothing untoward would happen. The next morning, before Mary could hand over her shift, Aaron informed her that their bosses had approved their business trip. She could prepare the documents and get ready. The train would leave the day after tomorrow morning. Mary worried about her mother's reaction and even walked home to gather her thoughts. The weather was warm and it was easier to think while walking. She needed to find the right words to reassure her mum. To Mary's surprise, her mother took the news calmly, or at least decided not to show her anxiety. Well, you were right to agree. Go, it'll be interesting and good experience. You're always at home when you're not studying or working. At least you'll get to see some new scenery from the train window, meet new people. Oh, Mary, I wish I could just break away and go somewhere too. Mum, I'm working now. This is just the beginning. I'll make more money, and our budget will grow. Save up and finally go on a vacation. Yes, I will, now that I'm a proud mother of a grown daughter, Helen confirmed. It had been raining during the night and early morning, just before the train left. Rain before a journey is a good omen, Mary said, adjusting her small backpack and taking Aaron's outstretched hand to help her onto the carriage. You're superstitious, Mary, he smiled. Yep, Mary replied without embarrassment. When the omens are good, I believe in them wholeheartedly. I try not to notice the bad ones, hoping the trouble will take offence and go away. Quite a life philosophy, Aaron remarked. Why is your backpack so thin? Have you packed everything you need? It's 5 days, a whole working week. What an expedition chief I have, Mary laughed. Are you going to control every little thing? I assure you, I've thought of everything I need. Aaron was engaging on the journey. Unlike many of Mary's talkative classmates, he spoke eloquently about the simplest things. He even managed to win over their compartment mate, 5-year-old Owen, who was travelling with his mother. According to Owen's mum, it was a feat worthy of the most powerful magician. Mary had noticed this about Aaron from her first day on the job. He knew how to connect with children, understood them, and spoke to them as adults, but in words they could grasp. Mary would never ask Aaron directly, but she often wondered about his personal life. At almost 30, with his personality and love for children, it seemed surprising that he still lived alone. Aaron was from a small regional town, like the one they were visiting on this business trip. Now, in their city, he was paying off the mortgage on a nice spacious apartment. Maybe that's why he wasn't rushing into starting a family just yet. Mary, this is none of your business, she chided herself silently, grateful when Owen distracted her by asking her to teach him how to draw a cat. Let's draw 100 cats of different colours. A whole cat city, she promised enthusiastically, despite her lack of artistic skill. At the hospital where the young specialists arrived for their business trip, Mary's first mishap was mixing up the wards. At the most inopportune moment, the barrette holding her heavy, long dark hair snapped, the very moment the local doctor had just invited Aaron into a young patient's room. Mary frantically searched her backpack for a spare hairpin. Aaron noticed and reassured her. Don't fuss, it's not urgent. I'll be in the 2nd ward. Meet me there." Instead of the 2nd ward, Mary was directed to the 12th. She failed to notice the worn 1 on the door, focusing only on the bright 2. Undeterred by the silence from within, she opened the door and entered. The room housed 4 beds, but only 2 small patients were present. Neither Aaron nor his local colleague, Dr. Russum, was there. One older boy sat idly in bed, engrossed in his cell phone, and merely muttered a quiet hello. The other, a small boy of about 6, immediately ran up to Mary, took her hand and said, "Hello, do you want to see how I drew Edward?" "Sure, show me," Mary agreed, intrigued, "if Edward doesn't mind." Mary observed the little boy's activity. When she entered, he had been drawing with pencils in a regular school notebook on the long, unpainted windowsill. She initially assumed Edward was the artist's only ward mate. But the older boy, about 11 years old, explained in a world-weary sigh, "I'm Matthew. Edward is a fish in the aquarium in the lounge area. A goldfish. Tommy named him." "Here's Edward," the brown-eyed boy handed Mary his drawing. It depicted, with surprising neatness and accuracy, an aquarium goldfish swimming in the sea. Above it shone the sun, and a pair of seagulls, resembling black check marks, flew overhead. "Wow, I couldn't do that," Mary, who couldn't draw, admitted honestly. "What's your name?" Tommy inquired of the woman in the white coat. "Mary," she introduced herself. "Then I'm Tommy," he said seriously. "Does Edward look like the real one? Does he?" "I haven't seen it yet, Tommy," Mary admitted. "When I do, I'll let you know." "And don't feed him," the boy cautioned. "You don't know what it can eat. It might get poisoned, like me. And there are no hospitals for goldfish." "So, you're here because of poisoning? But you seem almost fully recovered now." "Yeah, it's not worth talking about." Tommy waved his hand dismissively, clearly mimicking an adult's gesture. "Oh, all right. By the way, I came here mistakenly," Mary remembered, feeling her cheeks and ears flush. "The doctors are waiting for her, perhaps even looking for her, and here she was, not only lost but in no hurry to leave. I need to go, they're waiting for me in Ward 2. "Do you have children there?" Tommy asked immediately. "No, I'm a nurse with a doctor. We're here on a business trip." "That's good," Tommy decided aloud. "Please come again." "I will," Mary promised. "And soon, probably, your mum will come to visit you. You'll give her Edward's portrait." "No one will come to me," Tommy replied matter-of-factly. "Only Matthew's mother and father sometimes come." "Yeah, he's from the orphanage," Matthew explained calmly. 5 minutes later, Mary was in the right ward. But even if she were reproached for taking so long to find the right ward, she would hardly take it to heart. Her encounter with Tommy lingered in her thoughts. The girl, Holly, as Aaron suspected, likely didn't have bronchial asthma, as initially assumed, but they needed to wait for the laboratory test results. The lingering illness had made Holly sad, and Mary barely managed to get her to talk. "Have you seen the goldfish here? The one named Edward?" "Fish aren't called that," objected a surprised Holly. "It's a boy's name." "Some fish have names and grant wishes," Mary explained confidently. "You can make a wish." Dr. Russum, the local paediatrician, chuckled slightly as he listened to Mary talk to the children. Later that day, it became clear that Mary's visit was not only useful but necessary. One of the nurses in the children's department had caught a bad cold and come down with a fever. Another was on vacation out of town, and Mary was asked to take the full day shift, and she gladly agreed. In the evening, on the way to the hotel, Aaron suddenly suggested, "What's there to do in a hotel? Let's see the city in the evening, walk along the waterfront, sit in a cafe. I'll treat you." "Yeah, let's. Thanks," Mary replied. You're unusually pensive today. Are you tired? Do you regret coming? No, not at all, Mary said, trying to sound cheerful. It was true that she was distracted. Aaron was doing his best to entertain her, but she remained lost in thought. Aaron, I'm sorry. I've been curious about everything since we got on the train, Mary decided to share. It's just that I can't get Tommy out of my mind. The boy I met when I mixed up the wards. Dr. Russum said Tommy will be discharged in a couple of days. Everything went well. He was brought in on time. Most likely he ingested something during a walk in the forest, like a poisonous ornamental berry. Did the child complain about anything? What are you worried about? I just found out he's from an orphanage, and I'm sure no one will come for him. My mum grew up in an orphanage and told me about it occasionally. It's hard for kids like Tommy there. He's open to people, and people can be very different. And you should see how he draws. It's not just scribbles. It's like a real illustration from a children's book or a cartoon. Mary suddenly became embarrassed and stopped talking, catching Aaron's attentive gaze as he listened silently. You probably think I'm a naive student who's encountering an orphaned child in the hospital for the first time and falling apart out of inexperience. My mum warned me that I'd see many unpleasant things and that this is life. I got to ignore it and just do my job well. You can't read minds, Aaron said with a soft, friendly grin, spreading his hands. I just think you're a person who can empathize. And I don't think about naive college girls at all. Mary couldn't help but snort with laughter. Aaron had a way of cheering her up without saying or doing anything special. They had dinner in a small coastal cafe, discussed everything that came to mind, watched fishing boats and vessels with lanterns that looked like fireflies over the dark water, and walked along the embankment until late in the evening. Mary tried not to dwell on the fact that she had never experienced such an evening before, remembering her mother's words. Never create unnecessary expectations for yourself. But little Tommy from the 12th ward still came to mind every now and then, especially when she noticed boys his age walking with their parents or grandmothers. Those children knew for certain that someone loving would always be there for them in times of pain or fear. No one will come for me, Tommy had said. It shouldn't be like that, Mary thought. He's so young and already realizes that no one in the whole world cares about him. The shift began at 8 a.m, and Aaron quietly knocked on the door of the room at 7:30, even though he could have come to the hospital later. In small towns, it takes only about 15 minutes to get to work. The stores along the way were still closed, but Mary spotted a working kiosk near the bus stop. She picked out the largest and most colourful cartoon colouring book and 2 sets of large jigsaw puzzles. To her delight, a puzzle with funny, brightly coloured fish like Edward was on sale. Aaron was patiently waiting while she selected her gifts. They weren't late, after all. Mary hadn't noticed how quickly 2 day shifts passed in an unfamiliar hospital. The next morning, Tommy was to be discharged. He had managed to complete a puzzle with fish and wanted to give it to Mary as a souvenir, though he liked the picture very much himself. The sea turned out beautifully. While I'm here, let it stay with me, and then you can keep it, Tommy said, and it was useless to argue with him. You'll take it home as a souvenir. He already knew that Mary and the new doctor came from another city and would soon return home. Mary's last shift was a whirlwind. There were numerous procedures, paperwork, and visits from parents, at appointments, asking questions and seeking help to catch the attending doctor. It was a bit unusual for a novice nurse, as she hadn't yet worked day shifts at her own hospital. She tried to keep up with everything and was so focused on her work that she flinched when a familiar child's voice called out, "Mary, look! I have visitors!" She turned around and saw Tommy, who was being held by the hand of a shy elderly woman in a light sundress. "Hello," Mary said as warmly as possible. "Well, Tommy, and you were afraid that no one would come to see you." "This is Mrs. Macpherson," the boy introduced his companion gravely. "Hello, Mary. Nice to meet you. I worked as a nanny, but quit 6 months ago to take care of my elderly father. I moved him out of the village. Yesterday, I met my ex-colleague Carol, who used to work with me at the orphanage. She still works as an assistant cook in the kitchen. We got to talking and she told me Tommy was hospitalized, so I rushed to the emergency room right away." "Oh, there's Holly!" Tommy quietly tugged on Mrs. Macpherson's hand, noticing a girl at the end of the corridor. "Can I go say hello?" He looked at both the women in turn. "Go ahead," Mary approved. With a genuine smile, slightly tired but satisfied, Mrs. Macpherson watched Tommy attentively as he left, then turned back to Mary. "You should hear how Tommy talks about you. I imagined you just like this. He describes people very accurately. I was surprised at first, but then I got used to it. He draws like an adult, learned to read quickly, and writes well. He's truly a golden boy. Any parents would be happy to have such a son. He's very good-natured and open to people. It would be hard for him in an orphanage. It's better to be tough there, or you'll experience human cruelty from childhood. His mother was a lonely woman. She gave birth when she was already in her 40s, at her own risk. Her heart was weak. She must have known that, but she decided to do it anyway. Maybe it was serious love, or maybe she actually wanted a child, who knows now. Tommy was 3 years old when she died. She worked at home sewing, knitting toys, making portraits to order, drawing. Her work was even displayed at exhibitions. Neighbours said she made wonderful things with her hands, and she wasn't quite an ordinary woman, as if not from our world. That's why Tommy is so talented. Do you have children of your own? No, I'm only 20 years old. I just finished my 3rd year of medical school and live with my mother, Mary replied. Well, you'll have time for that later, Mrs. Macpherson said reassuringly. I can see that you love children, and they love you. Before discharging, Mary persuaded Tommy to keep the fish puzzle. It's my gift to you, and gifts shouldn't be given back. Then I'll give you a portrait of Edward, Tommy immediately responded. I was going to give it to you anyway. It was true, as now at the bottom of the drawing there was an inscription in bright red pencil. Tommy, for Mary. Now, riding the train, Aaron heard a strange sound like sobbing. Looking closely at Mary, he noticed she was furtively wiping away tears hidden beneath her glasses. When he had invited her on this business trip, he had worried she might be different from how he had imagined. Aaron hadn't had much luck with girls. In high school, he had a crush on a bright, beautiful classmate, Laurie. It even seemed she had a thing for him too. She was open to dating, going to movies, cafes and discos, the only entertainment options in their small town. But at graduation, when he seriously discussed his plans about studying in the same city, sticking together, and supporting each other, Laurie replied, I didn't want to say anything before, but now it's time. I'm going to the capital. My aunt promised to get me a job at her company. I've got to get on with my life. I don't want to spend it counting pennies like my mum. Yeah, I like you a lot. You're tall, handsome, you work out, you don't drink, you're not rude. I'm sorry, but I didn't love you. And I hope to find a guy in the capital who will help me solve my financial problems. Since then, Aaron didn't like to remember his graduation, but now he recalled it calmly and even with gratitude. Laurie at least had been honest about her plans and hadn't tormented him. At the medical school, Aaron met a classmate named Megan. She didn't have Laurie's striking beauty, but she had charm, a sense of humour, and shared Aaron's interests. He was sure that he and Megan were serious. He made plans and he was going to invite her to visit his parents on vacation. Megan beat him to it and invited him to her summer house. Aaron wasn't prepared for what he discovered. Megan's parents were wealthy. She had always been so down-to-earth, dressed in ordinary cheerful t-shirts and jeans. No interest in entertainment or glamour. He would never have guessed that her parents' summer house was such a mansion. As it turned out, Megan's father owned a company trading in medical equipment. Megan's parents met Aaron with impeccable politeness, but rather coolly. He realized undoubtedly, to them, he was a simple, poor provincial guy who could only be their daughter's friend. He also understood that Megan loved her father very much and listened to him. After that, they began to distance themselves from each other. They skirted around what was happening in silence, didn't quarrel, and just one day became ordinary classmates with a friendly relationship, seeing each other occasionally in common company. Of course it was painful, but there was no point in humiliating himself by discussing the relationship when it was already clear. Megan, herself, agreed with her father that she and Aaron were from different worlds, which were better to cross only tangentially, not to mix seriously. It was fortunate that a diploma and residency loomed on the horizon, taking first place in his life for a while. He studied and worked and studied. Before Aaron knew it, his official studies were over, but he was sure that a decent, self-respecting specialist never stops learning, primarily to avoid unacceptable mistakes in such work. Somehow, quickly, his life became that of a serious adult. Aaron had 2 or 3 more short, easy and pleasant romances, but they didn't change his lifestyle at all, and it wasn't a habit to have them. On the contrary, he didn't want to waste any more time on it. His parents even seriously worried that their son would turn into a convinced loner in 10 years, busy only with work. Aaron was beginning to think so himself, even internally agreeing with this thought. But then Mary got a job with them, and he realized with a boyish joy that he was wrong. For months he had clearly understood that this was a girl dear to him, with whom everything could be different. But now, on the train ride home from a business trip, Aaron didn't know what to do. He was sure that Mary was crying, but so quietly and secretly that he couldn't dare to call out to her and try to comfort her. Finally, the man quietly said, "Mary, are you all right? Please don't stay silent if something's wrong. Why don't we have some tea? We've got 2 hours until we're home. I'll go get some hot water." "Yeah," Mary agreed, trying to smile. When Aaron returned with 2 glasses of hot water, she had already pulled out dry cookies and fragrant, obviously homemade apples from her backpack. "Here, let's snack on these. Holly's grandmother brought us a whole basket of them." Overjoyed that Holly doesn't have terrible bronchial asthma, I left most for the children of the ward and took 2 apples for you and me. "Were you crying just now?" Aaron asked. "I can't stop thinking about Tommy," Mary admitted after a brief silence. Even the former nanny, Mrs. McPherson, said it would be hard for him to grow up in an orphanage. He needs a family. "I remember you told me about his mum. Mary, a kid like that is bound to be adopted by a good family. If it hasn't happened so far, it's by pure chance because the orphanage is in such a remote area, and someone lazy is responsible for the information. We can help put up information about him ourselves. I know where and how to do it." Aaron paused briefly to sip his tea, and Mary immediately spoke up. "You know, don't laugh at me, but I'd take Tommy myself. I know it's stupid. No one will let me adopt a child. I'm a student living with a mum. I can't provide for a child. I can't even provide for myself yet. I just started working part-time. But I'll still visit him. I promised him. Or rather, I couldn't promise because Tommy himself asked me, 'You will still come to visit me, won't you?' And I really can visit him. The trip is without transfers and not so long." Mary felt a little uncomfortable being so frank. Not only had she woken Aaron with her whimpering, but she decided to share her worries. "You'll probably remember this business trip for a long time," she tried to laugh. "You took an impressionable student with you, and she made such a melodrama." "Absolutely. I'll remember it for sure," Aaron promised with a disarming smile. "And I'm ready to go with you to visit Tommy, if you don't mind, of course. We can take my car and travel faster and more comfortably. What do you think?" Mary remained silent, afraid to say the wrong thing, to abandon her usual caution. She realized something was happening between them right now, and to be honest, it was happening all the evenings, when she and Aaron were walking around town after work, along the waterfront, eating ice cream and just talking. She reassured herself that it was just normal, friendly walks, knowing full well that she was lying to herself. Suddenly, Aaron asked, "Mary, will you and I spend evenings together at home? I would like that very much. I'd even say more than anything else in the world. You're the most wonderful girl I've ever met. It's serious and it's going to last. You can be sure of that. So I promise not to rush things. Do you agree?" Aaron reached across the table to her, and Mary simply put her hand into his palm in agreement. Tony hadn't thought he would come to this backwater town for a second time. Usually business trips to such places were one-offs, but when he was offered to manage the opening of the second service centre of the company, he agreed without hesitation. It was interesting to look at a familiar address, which he still remembered well after several years. And in general, he needed to unwind, because even on vacation, he had to go only with his wife and wherever she wanted. And here were 2 weeks of legitimate business trip freedom. On the first evening, stepping out of the new renovation-scented office of his company, Tony went to visit a woman from his past. He took a bottle of champagne, Grace's favourite cake, and an unusual potted flower. She hated cut flowers in bouquets. He was sure that after 7 years, Grace was still living there. And where should she go from here, if she hadn't left even in her youth? When he met her, he thought she was much younger, so thin in a crimson mini-dress. He thought she'd be in her 30s, but she turned out to be 42. Grace had never married, living first with her mother and then alone after her mother's death. When he asked her why this happened, she just shrugged her shoulders. "It didn't work out. Didn't find the right man, and I never wanted to get married just for the sake of it. That's so medieval." Tony could see that she wasn't lying. She was, however, single, but not alone with her pictures, drawings, and needlework. At the same time, communicating with her was easy and pleasant, especially because Grace didn't demand anything from their relationship. Tony was used to women always needing something, so he considered his arrangement with Grace the most pleasant of all. So what? Everyone likes it when life turns out conveniently. Even now, he had no doubt that Grace would be pleased to see him. True, her phone number was disconnected, but in 7 years she could have changed it several times. And the lights weren't on in the windows, but she could also be at the store or at a customer's for a fitting. Tony sat down on a bench at the entrance and waited. He noticed the curtain in the nearest first-floor window twitching occasionally, but didn't connect it with interest in himself until the window sash opened and a woman poked her head out. "Who are you waiting here?" the elderly madam asked sternly, casting an appraising glance over Tony and his bag of gentleman's kit. "Am I disturbing you in any way?" Tony inquired peacefully and politely. "Not really," the elderly lady hummed. "We have 3 floors to 3 entrances here. I can say with certainty that no one in our entryway is expecting guests. I don't know. Though I do remember your face from somewhere." "I'm an acquaintance of Grace Lewis from the 2nd floor," Tony admitted. He knew no one in this city, and his wife Hilary certainly had no acquaintances here. The curious woman's face immediately changed, as if his words were difficult to hear. She coughed, twitched the curtain as if it bothered her, and finally said sternly, "Grace Lewis is gone." "Moved away?" Tony asked, confused. "Died 3 years ago. She had a heart defect. Nobody knew. The child was left alone. No relatives. They took him to an orphanage." "A child?" Tony asked, disbelieving his ears. "Grace had no children. She wasn't planning to have any." Wasn't planning, but one day she did. "That's her business," said the neighbour. "He was 3 years old then, so now he's 6. Tommy was born in March. Yes, he turned 6 this spring. Tommy Lewis, if you want to visit him at the orphanage." "I see," Tony said stupidly. "Take this, please. I have no one else to visit here." He held out his package to the window, and the woman silently took it, apparently also a bit confused. Tony made 3 laps of the embankment. Even the dog walkers and their dogs looked at him suspiciously, a lonely, suspicious type hanging around. This year, the time of birth. Everything fits. Tony and his wife Hilary had no children. She couldn't bear a child, and after several unsuccessful attempts, they stopped hoping. They were at an age when some people have grandchildren. Hilary tentatively suggested adopting, but Tony immediately rejected this option. He didn't want someone else's child with unclear heredity. The real parents might be such that you'd be scared to death afterward. Still, their own family's shortcomings were clearer and more familiar. At least there was someone to blame, and they didn't have any bad personalities in their family. Now it turned out that most likely Tony had his own son. Of course, it wasn't certain. He needed to check, but even to check required making up his mind. On the way back from the business trip, Tony, contrary to a long-standing habit, didn't even talk to the cute neighbours in the compartment. He ducked into his laptop, pretending to work, and thought. Knowing you have a child growing up in an orphanage is not the most pleasant feeling. Of course, I need to do a paternity test first. But Grace wasn't at all like a woman who changed men like gloves. On the contrary, I am sure she hadn't been with anyone for a few years, as she once admitted herself. Of course, she was such an original, all into creativity. Even her home interior was like a sorceress's. Different screens, lace curtains, paintings, and all by Grace's own hands. She wasn't a special beauty. I'd seen prettier, but she had a special charm. Yes, Tony didn't remember most of his business trips after so many years, but this one, thanks to Grace, he remembered with pleasure. Even now, on the way home, he was under the impression of the nasty, heavy news of her death, and then about the boy. It's true what they say. You don't go back to a place that was good for you. Nothing good ever comes of it. Now he'd seen it for himself. Something has to be done. Forget about a possible son until the paternity test is done. Or talk to Hilary. Most importantly, how to present it to Hilary. She's been nervous lately, irritated by the smallest things. He can't do without a thoughtful approach. And what to say? The truth? That's the only option left. Otherwise, how can he explain wanting to take this boy into the family and not another child? He doesn't even know how healthy and developed the kid is. Yeah, it's something to think about. It's better not to rush, to weigh the pros and cons. By the time it was time to go down to the station platform of his hometown, Tony decided that first he would contact the orphanage administration by email, then he would do a paternity test, and only then would he think about the conversation with Hilary, if it turned out that the child was his after all. Hilary, the head accountant of a stable company for many years, was considered a practical and sober-minded woman. Lately, however, she had been having more and more doubts. She constantly felt an inexplicable anxiety, and some premonitions wouldn't give her rest. What alarmed her wasn't the decline in strength, weight or wrinkles, but the strange behaviour of her husband Tony. His gaze seemed constantly absent. Usually, such a chatterbox, annoying her with unnecessary detailed stories about his boring work and colleagues, he now spoke only about business. Hilary finally realised what the expression "gone into himself" meant. She didn't want to ask. She had never had to before. She told her friend Amanda, who immediately assumed the most common explanation. "He's seeing someone, Hilary. I don't want to upset you, but that's how it usually manifests at first. If there's no evidence, it's useless to pursue the truth. He'll stubbornly deny everything, only to make you look like a jealous fool. Trust my bitter experience." Amanda did have experience. Her husband Leon had twice wanted to leave the family, but for some reason never did. The reason was unclear, but Amanda attributed this to her own merits. "When Leon first mocked me for suspicion, I decided, screw it, I'll maintain imperturbable calm. I said to myself, no hysterics, Amanda, no looking for a mistress or causing scandals. That would just show I'm a scandalous witch, and he should run away to that sweet, affectionate kitten. No way. I'm smart and calm, and I'm his rock. So, what happened? Leon ran away for a while and then calmed down. Now he's only thinking about building a summer house. In general, it's the victory of reason." Hilary nodded. It made sense. Amanda was right. Maybe it wasn't her worldly wisdom that kept Leon, but their jointly acquired property, which would have to be divided if they split up. Leon was too calculating and lazy for that. Still, Amanda had a point. If a couple continued to live together, it was better to do so without quarrelling than to accumulate resentments. She decided to keep quiet and watch. No, it didn't look like another woman was involved. Tony came home at the same time as usual, staying out late with friends a couple of times a week, as he had for years. Except for that absent look in his eyes, which was becoming more and more annoying. Nothing had changed. When Tony suddenly reminded Hilary of her long-standing desire to adopt a child, she tensed. Her husband was clearly starting from afar. He couldn't have just changed his mind. It wasn't in his character to pity orphans. She had worried for many years about not being able to become a mother, and was even ready to take such a measure. But Tony had always rejected the option of adopting someone else's child so categorically that now she was surprised. "I haven't offered it in years," she reminded him gently. "You're a smart woman, I know," Tony began, and his wife became even more wary. "Yes, I'm not stupid. I realise your flattery isn't for nothing. Tony, tell me straight. What's the matter?" "Hilary, I have a child. He's 7 years old. He lives in an orphanage in the town where I opened a new service 7 years ago. His mother died. Her heart was weak. He has no relatives." Touching. "And 7 years later, I find out that my husband cheated on me with a sick woman on a business trip and left her a baby as a souvenir. That's a wonderful story. Is that who you're offering me as a son? Don't you think it would have been better if I didn't know he was yours? Would a complete strange child seem better to you than my son?" Tony wondered sadly. "Do you think I'm a saint? Isn't it hurtful to look upon this child as a lifelong reminder of your adultery?" "Hilary, I understand your feelings, but he actually looks like me. I've got a picture of him. I'll find it on my phone right now. He's a healthy boy, and the tutors say he's smart and capable." "Are you sure he's yours?" Hilary squinted at him. "You're not particularly smart, and—" "Don't be childish, Hilary. We're adults. Why do you have to insult me? You used to be happy with my intelligence level." "Let's make me guilty now. Am I the one who went on business trips and had relationships with random acquaintances?" "Hilary, I'm sorry, but trust me, nothing like this has happened since. Let's put emotions aside and think straight. Here's a picture I found." Hilary reluctantly looked at the phone. "Yeah, he's cute. His eyes are smart," she said idly. She stepped back and began silently putting the dishes in the dishwasher. She didn't want to throw a tantrum. It was quiet. She'll think about it, thought Tony, and he wasn't mistaken. A month later they went to meet Tommy Lewis. Tony rather liked the boy. Not a sportsman, not a leader, not too perky, much like himself. But calm. There would be fewer problems. And smart, likely to be one of those who earns with his head. Perhaps he'll become a restorer, also a lucrative profession. He clearly had Grace's talent, handsome as well and easy to approach. Pay attention to him and he'll love you. Tony wanted someone to love him. They could go fishing together, go to the countryside with a tent, in the company of men, all with their sons. Now he would also be with his. Hilary was silent for a long time after the meeting at the orphanage. In the evening at the cafe, while slowly stirring a scoop of ice cream into her coffee, she said, "No, Tony, I won't love him. I keep trying to imagine his mother and immediately feel dislike. I begin to wonder what she could be like. What kind of women do you really like? No, I'm sorry, don't ask for the impossible. It'll be worse for the child that way." Tony realized that convincing Hilary was useless. He could only hope for a while that she might change her mind. Should I talk to her friend to persuade her? He wondered. Meanwhile, Carol, the assistant cook at the orphanage, was already sharing the news with her former co-worker. "Mrs. Macpherson, you're about to fall over. A couple showed up today, interested in your favourite Tommy. They sat in the principal's office for a long time and then talked to him outside. I was on my lunch break, feeding cats, and I watched them. I can't say they're young, both under 50, and it's obvious that they don't have children of their own. They're so stiff, they don't know how to communicate with a child. It seems they had long hoped to have their own children, but failed, so they decided to adopt." "So, what kind of people are they, Carol? Don't beat around the bush." Mrs. Macpherson began to worry. "I didn't like them very much," Carol sighed honestly. "I can't say anything special about him, but he's rather prominent and knows it. And the wife seemed to be in her own world. The husband brought Tommy a soccer ball, tried to play, said something. Tommy seemed interested. And the wife, well, she smiles at the child, but somehow with strain. She looks at him so carefully, with such scrutiny, like he's a commodity in the market. Although it's immediately obvious that Tommy is smart and well developed. She was somehow cool to him from the start, even I could see it, though I wasn't standing close enough to look directly into her eyes. I don't know, Mrs. Macpherson. I don't know. It seems to me, if a woman loves children, she approaches them differently and speaks differently. And Tommy, with this couple, was somehow wary too. He didn't seem to like them much. In general, I don't know what will come out of this story." "We should call Mary," Mrs. Macpherson immediately concluded. "Who?" Carol didn't catch on. "Well, who among us is a pensioner with sclerosis?" exclaimed her friend. "That nurse Tommy met in the hospital, who now visits him with her boyfriend. That doctor, with whom she first came here. Didn't you see them yourself when you were feeding your cats?" "I don't only feed cats at work," Carol snorted. "I have a lot of work to do in the kitchen, as you well know. I haven't seen your favourite couple, but I remember what you told me. Yes, really, call that girl, since Tommy loves her so much. Let them decide something. The child is not a toy. He has his own feelings." It took 6 months to convince her. Hilary agreed to try again, hoping the emotions had settled. Tommy was about to have a birthday. They bought a gift and went. The orphanage headmistress met them with a polite but official smile. "Tommy no longer lives with us, and his last name is not Lewis." "Why? Where is he?" asked Tony, realizing he was asking a foolish question. "We have no right to divulge that information. He's been adopted." "How? But I'm his father. there's a test result," Tony began, but the orphanage headmistress interrupted him adamantly, though just as politely. "To my regret, we have many children in orphanages with living biological fathers. You haven't contacted me or the child for more than half a year. You haven't tried to reach out or make any inquiries about him. This doesn't bode well for serious consideration of you and your wife as parents. I may not be entitled to my opinion, but I'm sure the people who adopted Tommy have already become his real parents." Mary looked at her sleeping son in the bed. She had been so afraid that she and Aaron wouldn't be given custody. A young, newly established family, and she was student and only 14 years older than the child. But Aaron had been sure in a positive result from the very beginning and stubbornly believed that everything would work out. Mary often remembered the last 6 months with a happy smile. Life had suddenly become incredibly fast-paced. She and Aaron firmly decided to get married after just 2 months of dating. They simply couldn't imagine living apart. Helen's mother was shocked by such haste. "It seems that Aaron is really reliable and decent," she cautiously admitted. "But everything is happening so fast. But all right, I suppose it really does happen that way sometimes." But fate continued to surprise Mary's mum further. When she learned of their plans to adopt Tommy, she was silent for half a day. In the evening she called and said, "I also want to meet my future grandson." Tommy irrevocably became her love from the first day, perhaps because he simply called her Helen and constantly drew her portraits. "You're beautiful. No one else has such a grandmother, only me." What's most pleasant is that Tommy says these things just because he means them, not to ask for something, Helen said to her daughter with a smile. As if sensing Mary's gaze, Tommy opened his eyes and reported, "I was running after some curly dog in a dream and fell into a hole, but it wasn't scary. Where's Daddy?" "Daddy's on duty. Sleep, dear. Good for you for not being afraid of dreams." Mary ruffled her son's hair, and he closed his eyes. "He has a dog in every dream now. Well, we should get a dog," thought Mary, with a happy smile on her face.